yourself together. Paul is telling the Thessalonian church, get yourself together, because when it's all said and done, God has got the final say. So when it's all said and done, he said, may God himself, the God of peace, sanctify you through and through. He said, let God work through you. Let God shift stuff out of the way. Let God manipulate. Let God massage stuff in your life so that he can have the whole you, not part of you. He says, may your whole spirit, your whole soul, your whole body be kept blameless. Why? Because Jesus is coming back again. So hang in there. Give God all of you, and I promise you, he'll take care of all of it.
Java with Pastor John is brought to you by the Bennett family of companies, where strong freight and faith create lasting success. Visit drive4bme.com. drive4bme.com.
The big question, by the way, is do I go back once this weekend is over with and through this particular show, and by the way, the one last Thursday, and cut them in such a way that people can actually enjoy them? Or do I keep them up in all of their glory so that I can go back and be reminded on occasion? I'm sure somebody out there is recording this, maybe our friends from Zebulon 5, where they can just play this for me and remind me of, that at some point I probably could do this without a producer, but it ain't today, it ain't tomorrow, and it certainly ain't the next year or so. Welcome back to Road Gang Radio, 615-292-6366. If you bounce on over and check out the chat, we are now back up on YouTube, and I am going to bounce on over and say good morning to Jody. Brother, I am having a morning. It looks like Dre got me set up on the other side of the world, so I got a little YouTube going on as well. How you doing?
We're doing marvelous. How are you? Other than being really, really busy trying to get everything done.
Well, the good news is that all the people that we've invited here this morning are not going to know there was any problem, because they're going to be set up for success, because Dre has set me up for success now. And I'm very, very thankful to him over in Ocean Springs. He actually jumped on the back end and did some stuff to set that up, and I really appreciate that. How are you, and where are you going, and where are you headed?
I'm doing great. If you remember last week, I told you I had something going on this week, on a Tuesday. So Tuesday, I picked up another delivery of another brand new truck. I picked it up Tuesday morning with 27 miles on it. And I don't know it's almost identical to the one that I just traded in. Now, I don't know what they've done to these things, but I ran down to Fond du Lac coming out of Green Bay and fueled up, and then they called me and they forgot to give me a couple things with the truck, so I went back up to Green Bay and with the load, and I'm just crossing into the Kentucky-Indiana border, and I haven't even used up a half a tank of fuel yet.
Wow.
So I was Fond du Lac up to Green Bay all the way down here. I haven't even, granted, I only got 25,000 pounds on. I've been running 68 to 72 mile an hour the whole time just to break it in, just to see, and yeah, I'm not even down to a half a tank yet. So I have no idea what they done. Same motor, same everything, same color. The sleeper's a little bit different, no bigger, just a little bit different on the inside. That's about the only thing. You can't tell the difference from the outside, other than this one has the windows on the bottom part of the sleeper and the last one didn't. Other than that, you can't tell the difference.
Let me ask you a question.
So
with those little tiny differences, does it feel like incredibly familiar and yet slightly strange?
Oh, 100%. Like a lot of people would tell you, Peterbilt's a Peterbilt, Freightliner's a Freightliner, they're all the same. No, it's not. Backing up this one, I got it set up a little bit different, and the steering is a little bit sharper on this one compared to the other one. It just, you can tell the difference in the driving and the handling. I can't really explain it. But honestly, with that one I had for 3.5 years, and this one backs up different. The turning radius on it is insane, completely insane. And I've been in a lot of trucks in 35 years, and this one, like I said, compared to the other one, handling wise, backing up, going around corners, making turns is different. surprisingly different. I didn't think it would be. I started doing it the way I was doing it in the other truck, and it's like wow, I'm screwing this all up like a rookie. You know, it looked like I never drove a truck before the first time I backed it up. Honestly, it backed up that much different.
So that's,
I can't explain it.
no, actually, I can give it kind of a shot. There is a couple of things that made me think of this. I know for a fact that one time I got, and this is not the proper analogy, but it'll kind of get you there. I got a complete tune-up of my car and then took it over and got a first-class cleaning of it. I mean, an inside-outside cleaning of it, and basically got into a new car. And just a little tiny stuff. I mean, I knew my car, I knew it well, and this was still the same car that I knew. Okay, so it was the exact same car, but everything had been kind of, the stuff that needed to be replaced was replaced, gotten the tune-up. There were some recommendations that they made that I actually agreed with. And even then, handling it was slightly different. And I suddenly felt like I could not drive my car as well as I could drive it a week earlier. This is incredibly strange because you're in the uncanny valley. The way they talk about the idea that the closer something is to the thing itself, the weirder it gets. So every little subtle difference, everything that you've acclimated yourself to, you feel like you're in the place you were before, but you're not. And so everything seems weird all over again. Everything seems where it should be and how it should be, but these little tiny differences accumulate, and that accumulation kind of makes you feel like, basically you're experiencing a David Byrne song, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm experiencing something. I mean, when you bring all that up, the switches, like to turn the inside lights on the other one, the switch all the way to the left was to turn on the lights in the bunk. Now the one all the way to the left turns on the dome light above me, and the one for the bunk is all the way to the right. I don't know why they switched that, but they did. So I'm not an engineer. I'm sure that was a reason to charge an extra couple $1,000 just to move a switch from one side to the other. But whatever, it is what it is. But it's a nice truck. Like I said, I don't know what they did with the fuel mileage on these things. I'm not running it any different, but I'm getting a whole lot better fuel mileage. And it's not even done being broke in yet. I don't even have 700 miles on it yet. I picked up this 25,000-pound load coming out of Fond du Lac, going down here to Alachua, Florida. Nice way to break it in and stretch it out.
Yeah, what's interesting too, though, is the fact that our good friend Kevin Lindsay, when he was on this week, he actually talked about the idea of reading that owner's manual. But the other thing is, like, I am now beginning to loathe the internet and all the doom scrolling. But it's always one of those things, too. Lindsay talks about this all the time, about the idea that it's like, take a moment to figure out what the thing actually is good for. And one of the things the internet is good for is you talked about the idea of moving a button from one side to the other. Sometimes we just think it's random. I would actually, if I actually had one hand free, I'd probably check it for you. But at some point, I would look up and just ask questions like that. Literally, you can ask the question on Google and be like, hey, they moved this button from here to here. Is there any reason why for doing that? And trust me, there is a Reddit chat room, or there is some OEM, or there is some manual online that will actually probably explain why they did it. There might even be an article someplace. And it's not that it's a big deal, but often you find out that's what happens, which is a really kind of cool situation, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. The bad thing with Google is when I use the voice to text, a lot of times it doesn't know how to answer my questions when I ask, like, who is the Einstein that moved all the switches in a Freightliner? It doesn't know how to answer that. You know what I'm saying? But it is what it is. So is your partner in crime going to be there at whatever time, 9 o'clock? Or
No, she is not. And I'll tell you why she's not, because she is busy at work on what is next. And we have to move very quickly, Jody. I mean, what I'm doing right now is I am landing a plane. That is essentially what I am doing. And I can explain this in a little bit of detail that might make sense. Dave tried to retire twice, in 2024 and then 2025, and for reasons completely out of his control and out of a sense of obligation and duty to the people that he loved, he stuck around to lend his name and his brand to buy people time. This has gone on forever and a day, and we had a long talk about it, and then we had the Christmas break where we actually had some time off, and I could see that, I spend a lot of time with Dave outside of work. I mean, after all, he's my father-in-law. And one of the things that we realized was, dude, it's been time, and it's been time for a while. Because he had actually come to me in 2024 and said, I'm kind of done and I'm ready to start doing this. And if you look at the way that all began, it was 2023, 2024. If you look at the way that began, you will see that it began fairly well and well planned. And then a couple of monkey wrenches that were out of his control played themselves out, Jody. And when they did, it kept on, in the words of Godfather Part 3, pulling him back in. So when we decided to do this, and Lindsay and I have plans together, and Lindsay and I have plans for stuff that we work on separately, because that's what I think in a lot of ways keeps people fresh. I think one of the issues I've always had with this particular company is that over the last decade, I've noticed that it's so insular, and it's insular because of all the responsibilities that it had. It was responsible for 6 hours of real estate in the morning. Essentially, what was happening at SiriusXM was we were carrying the water for the channel. Now, they've done some stuff since then, since we've left, but I mean, most of the promotion, most of the traveling, most of the banner waving was done by us with little return for us on our end as far as they were concerned. And a lot of people's independent projects, stuff that they wanted to do that still involved both trucking adjacent, and sometimes not trucking at all, was really, really taking a back seat. Lindsay has worked long and hard on We Should Write. And, you know, the idea of when we sunset this, it's not going to be, I mean, she's got it all set up and it's going to do fantastic with it, but the idea is that she wanted to make sure that her infrastructure to be able to launch it, put it out there, and make sure it kept going was still viable. And, you know, when we talked about the idea of this 2-week process, because there was a discussion of shutting it down on the spot and just being like, okay, that's it, game, set, match. And I made the decision to keep this going, but I also made it really clear to Lindsay, who basically said, I'll do what you want. I said, you know what? I want you to do what you want and take care of yourself. And so she won't be, it's a long way of saying no, but it's a long way of saying keep on listening to We Should Write when they get that sucker really, you know, really up and running where it is. It's still continuing to have episodes. You can check them out and all that kind of groovy stuff. So there you go. How was that for a long form explanation? You like that?
Yeah, I loved it. You know, I guess the question I have is, in time, are we still going to be able to follow you guys?
Oh,
I mean, face it, you and Lindsay and Dre, everybody there, you guys are part of the trucking community now. I mean, I actually look forward to tuning you in. I went nuts looking for you on YouTube this morning. I'm like, what the hell happened? Or what the heck happened?
Me? That's what happened, Jody. I'm what happened. I'm what happened. So here's the deal. I got to take a break now. I got to get my first guest of the morning on. But I wanted to tell you thank you. We will have announcements later on. There will be a bit of a break, but it'll also be attached with a whole bunch of groovy stuff. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to speak for anything Lindsay's working on either. I can talk about We Should Write because she's out there promoting it, and I really want to make sure that gets promoted because I want to make sure people understand that has not lost momentum or speed. It's still doing its thing. It's still moving down the road. But anything else, I don't want to steal any of her thunder, and I don't want to announce anything on my end until I'm absolutely confirmed. I've done that too much over the last couple of months. I don't want to do it anymore. All right, Jody, I got to get out of here. I love you, buddy, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Hey, love you guys too, and you got me on Facebook. I know you have my number, but if you happen not to have it, it is on my profile. So you can call me at any time you want. You know, you, Lindsay, whoever. If you guys want to call, call. You want to rant. I don't care. Just call. The number's there.
I will do, my brother. Thank you for the call. Love hearing from you.
Yes, sir.
Be safe.
We will talk soon, I promise.
Josh Lovin is coming up next, by the way. We're going to be shooting the breeze, he and I. Listen to these spots. Some of them actually are for people who stuck with us, and some of us is just saying thanks to you guys. Road Gang Radio continues on the other side of this break.
17 Sapp Brothers Travel Centers are known for great food, hospitality, and mom-approved showers and restrooms. But don't forget the service centers. Sapp Brothers ASE certified technicians can repair nearly any issue in shop or roadside, including axle repair. Dig into your free steak dinner with your oil change. That's a Sapp Brothers tradition to thank you for your business. Tires? Sapp Brothers will beat any competitor's advertised price on tires. And download the Sapp Brothers app for exclusive promotions in the shop, restaurant, and store. Your spot under the coffee pot is waiting for you at Sapp Brothers.
There are precious few nonprofits in the trucking industry, and even fewer that make a tangible difference in the lives of professional drivers. So thank goodness for the St. Christopher Fund. Since 2008, over 4,000 over-the-road semi-truck drivers have turned to the St. Christopher Truckers Fund when a medical issue took them out of work. The SCF steps in and pays necessary household expenses such as mortgage, rent, utilities, insurance, and vehicle payments. The SCF also provides free health and wellness programs for drivers. So find out how the SCF can help you, or help the SCF yourself. They'll turn your dollars and cents into that tangible difference for the professional drivers who need it most. Support our highway heroes with a donation at truckersfund.org.
Check out the new over-the-top lineup at participating Country Pride and Iron Skillet restaurants. 3 gigantic sandwiches loaded with flavor. Try the Chicken Parm Stack, the Big Country Combo, or the Ultimate Smash Melt. The Ultimate Smash Melt. 2 delicious smash burger patties, surrounded by 2 grilled cheese sandwiches. 2 sandwiches in 1. Visit your favorite Country Pride or Iron Skillet restaurant and come hungry.
Available for dine-in only at participating Country Pride and Iron Skillet restaurants inside TA or Petro Travel Centers. From the wee small hours of the morning to the crack of dawn, RadioNemo has been there with you.
Whether you've got the overnight or you're the first wheels on the road, RadioNemo's been where you need us to be.
Providing the laughs, giving the facts, playing the tunes, and keeping it rolling.
We've been your light in the darkness, your first cup of coffee, and a voice of sanity.
Semi-sanity, actually. We're all a little crazy here. Crazy for the men and women who keep this country going and moving and doing.
Crazy for trucking, crazy for truckers of all shapes and sizes.
Is that a fat joke?
Not if we can help it. Because it isn't just about the rules and regs, it isn't just about the day-to-day, it's about your health, your homes, and your hearts.
So we wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you from everyone at RadioNemo for sticking with us, standing by us, and keeping the traditions rolling into the future. Back to Road Gang Radio with Jimmy Mack, Lindsay Lawler.
Give me a minute, y'all. I'm coming.
And you, because if you're listening, you're in the gang. Take it away, founding member Phone Master Dre.
You know, normally I would have probably had a little bit of time to figure out what kind of transitions we were going to play and all that kind of stuff. This show was never set up not to have a producer, have the host in the production seat. Show was never set up not to have Lindsay here. But as we begin to kind of bring the ship in, I just thought for old time's sake we would play all those old rhythms as we kind of wrap up our time here with you under the banner of RadioNemo of North America. As of not tomorrow, but the following Friday, that banner will be gone. We're going to sunset the company, as you guys all who have been tuning in for a long time know. We're going to put the name Nemo out to pasture. Dave Nemo is not going to go out to pasture. He's going to keep on playing drums, keep on maybe dropping in and saying hi from time to time, maybe give a couple of sound bumpers for wherever we go next, whatever we put together next. I'm really kind of excited, by the way, about whatever is next from both a standpoint from Lindsay, from myself, and from Lindsay and I together, because one of the things that you guys have always kind of heard from me when I've put these things together is to kind of acknowledge what is past and to kind of set up for what is to come. The next show you hear from me when we launch this, whatever we do next, and we'll keep you guys abreast and in the loop. Whatever you hear next from me will be the first time, if Lindsay and I do something together, it'll be the first time that she and I will be able to do something together that is uniquely our own, not under the Nemo banner. If you hear something from me next time, it'll have all, there's some sensibilities of mine that play their way through this. But for the first time, I will be able, and you'll be able to judge too and say, hey, you know what? We like the other stuff. We're going to go someplace else. But I'm going to take a chance because I think I know a lot lot of you guys out there who we're all chatting with. Good morning to you, Earl and Lovey, by the way. Thanks for dropping in. I also want to say good morning to Chowder. Get him on here before I actually bring Josh Levin on, the last appearance from the fellows from J.J. Keller on this particular platform. Hey, Chowder, I wanted to get you in before I brought Josh into the scene.
Hey, good morning, Jimmy Mack and listening audience of the Worldwide Radio. So I'll try to go quick because I'm in Wasta, South Dakota, home of nothing ever gets developed around here. But, Jimmy, I just want to talk to you a minute. I was liking the show the other day, kind of texting with you about, everything. And you asked the segments we're going to miss or what did we do well and all that. You know what I really enjoyed the most about the whole platform show was, other than the interaction the friends made on the typing and all that, I really like the educational component to it and the ability for drivers to call in and ask questions. And the two favorite segments I liked what we got to do it on, liked the Adventures with Peter Stark. And as we all know, I'm biggest fan of Revolutionary Row. I love the different perspectives, the different takes, the different interpretations, and all factually based, historically and otherwise. I like the Halo of the Health section that you did. And the one thing I wanted to ask you, Jimmy, have you ever tried the oregano and black seed oil infused, almost look like fish oil type vitamin?
No, I have not. Is that coming with a recommendation?
It does for me because I saw it on one of the YouTube sites that I had to learn how to use when I found this lovely platform because Chowder was one of those adamantly not changing my historical ways of doing things, and I did. And it's not bad. I've noticed that it seemed to be a little bit more attentive and a little bit more alert. Seems like I have a little bit better dietary discharge process going on, not all bloated and bound up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It says take 2 a day. I haven't quite braved that because they're not bad going down, but if you actually burp or something, it's almost like a spicy carrot taste coming back up. So I've only been doing it about a week. I'm going to try it for the end of this week. Then I'm going to move up to the 2 a day, but found it online. I'll try to shoot you a picture of it to let you know what kind and brand, but seems to really help. And it's supposed to be a natural alternative to some of these other harsher pharmaceutically made same things. And that's kind of what I took from the doctor show you did the other day. Maybe I'm wrong, but she was more leaning these more natural, more organic, not as in so much the grown out of the ground, but more organic ingredient stuff opposed to chemically enhanced. Maybe I got the wrong take on that.
I don't think you did. I think you got the response that I think you got a chance to enjoy what you wanted to enjoy, my brother. And that's
right.
That's what it kind of comes down to, man. If it did it for you, I'll give it a shot. I'm always willing to give something a shot. I'm always willing to make that happen.
They aren't bad. Just like that Rise coffee, the mushroom-based one.
Mm-hmm.
I got some of that for Christmas from my mom, and I know Lindsay speaks high of that. And good morning to you, Lindsay, if you're listening. Hope you, Faye, and everybody's doing good. Freya's doing good. I really like that coffee too. I don't have the jitters when you miss your, from coffee cup ounce 41 to 60. When you have your first coffee cup and then you have to get the fill, you get that jitter. I don't notice it as much with this mushroom-based stuff.
No.
But that's about all I had, and I want to tell you thanks again for everything you've done, our adversarial battles, our normal battles, our good discussions, our laughing times, sad times. You've always been there for us, Jimmy, and I appreciate everything that Dave Nemo, brand, person, you, and everybody else entitled and involved in it have brought us drivers.
Well, do me a favor, Chowder. Would you tell Josh Levin hello and tell the fellow from J.J. Keller welcome to the show because I just brought him on.
Morning, J.J. Keller and everybody. I have a bad memory, but you guys all have a good day. Great show, and I'll be listening to become educated.
Thank you, Mr.
Good morning, Josh.
Mr. Education Station. Thank you, sir. Hey, Josh Levin is here. He is the fellow from J.J. Keller. We were just getting started, Josh, as I'm sure you heard. I made numerous attempts to give folks over at J.J. Keller a call. I know Claire has been in touch. I have to tell you, when Tom Bray began to bring the plane in, when he began his retirement process, I said to him, dude, I don't know if anybody can keep up with you. I don't know if anybody can replace you. He said, well, I'm not replacing me. He said, I'm giving you somebody even better. Equally as good. Now, I'm not going to tell you that, and I don't think either one of us is going to say that we're better than Tom Bray.
Absolutely right.
My friend, I am so thrilled with everything you have contributed to this show, your focus on culture. So much so, I don't know if I told you this, Jane Jazrawi, who once a month comes in as kind of the only repeat guest on Education Station. She and I actually got into a really great conversation because I'd asked her to listen to you when you came on and talked about culture, about a culture of safety, a culture of education. Yeah. And we always laugh because people use that as a buzzword, Josh. And I'm like, you don't really know what culture means. You're just saying it because it's corporate speak. You are one of the first people outside of the education people who we've brought on who really has a grasp of what that culture means. And there's so much we can talk about. And there's a way to kind of work it in to what you wanted to talk about today, because this is funny, but this is a great example of culture. What was the number one violation in 2025 is just extraordinary and speaks directly to culture, I think. And good morning to you, by the way.
Hey, I always enjoy being here. I love the energy of the show. I just love being here and yeah, talking about culture and what drivers can do to be safer. And I've spent 25 years trying to make things better in whether it was in law enforcement or in the motor carrier world, and creating that culture of safety, like you said, is not just putting different core value words in your corporate building. It's not updating your policies and procedure manuals with colorful photos and updated graphics. If you're not relaying that straight down to how this impacts your drivers, every single driver knows that you're just going through the motions. It's like you said, corporate big speak, and it's not actually doing anything to make your operation safer. And drivers see that. Drivers see when you're just going through the motions to kind of look the part, but you're not actually walking the walk.
I wanted to tell you really quickly. I told you that my partner, back in a previous time, in sheriff days, he ended up becoming and actually brought me on for a year to help him kind of institute the program. He ended up becoming a disciplinarian at this middle school. And he said something really great to one of the first parental meetings we had. He goes, look, he said, my job is not to educate your children. He said, now, if I happen to give them something that deepens their education, I am thrilled about that. He said, what I'm here to do, and what my friend is here to do, and what everybody that works for us is here to do, is to make both your children feel safe, and he said, and more importantly, to make you feel safe sending your children here. And it's the same thing in a culture of accountability at a trucking company, working for a carrier and all that kind of stuff. What culture really does is that culture is, that terrible term that is just toxic now, safe space. I need a safe space, which is a shame. Right. It's a shame, too, because that's exactly, there was a university president recently, the University of Chicago, and he said, you are physically safe when you come here. You are intellectually in danger. And I love that. And the same thing kind of applies, is that if you come and you join our company, if you set up a culture of safety, you are physically safe here, but we're going to challenge the hell out of you to join that culture. And that's such an important thing. And I can't believe that the number one thing last year, the number one violation was lamps broken or obscured. I can't believe that.
Yeah. Out of all the, that's interesting, Jimmy. There were 3.1 total inspections, 3.1 million total inspections in 2025. Over 2 million of those occurred on the roadway, and that resulted in a total violations of 3.3 million violations. And you nailed it. The number one was required lamps broken or obscured. And that is probably, I obviously understand lights can go out while you're in transit, but that's not the bigger issue. The bigger issue is drivers not doing a proper pre-trip. And you weave that into creating that culture of safety by just talking about the importance of doing a pre-trip. That they released the top 20 violations, which is what we'll get into, kind of highlight some of these areas, right? But every one of these issues can be prevented with a thorough pre-trip inspection. And I've said this a lot, and it's embarrassing, but at my last position as a director with a company over 10,000 people, we did a mock audit to see how many inspections our drivers were actually doing, pre-trip inspections. And at our large DCs, where we would have several hundred, 300, 400, 500, 600 people at a DC working, at those 10 locations, we had drivers just simply get their paperwork and get in the tractor, not even walk around it one time. We had that happen at about 17% of all of our dispatches. And Jim Mack, we ended up putting 350 million miles on the road that year on our road driver side. Think of what 17% of that means. And you can't create a culture of safety until you talk about, hey, why do we even need one? Well, that's why. When I have 2,000 accidents a year and I've got this many drivers just simply getting in the tractor and driving away without doing a proper pre-trip, how are you supposed to know about all these defects? And a lot of these defects, brake-related, tire-related, lights, they can contribute to an accident. So, it's kind of one of those deals. You have to be passionate as a safety person, as a safety professional, and you have to talk about things that are uncomfortable. And not doing a proper pre-trip is just DOT 101's driver basics. And so that's kind of when I talk about culture of safety, it's not the buzzwords that you put on your walls about integrity and collaboration and all that fun stuff. That's for the corporate people. For your drivers, how's this affect them? Well, we got this many accidents, this many violations that we could have prevented if we'd have just done some basic stuff like pre-trip. So when I talk culture of safety, it's that kind of stuff. It's doing an audit on what you're supposed to be doing and then identifying it, talking about it, not making it like nobody's in trouble. But man, can we do better as a group, guys and gals? And the answer is obviously yes. And that's kind of how you start. You just got to bring it down to the brass tacks, start from the foundation and just build from there. And that's kind of what we did. We started with these lack of pre-trip inspections. And obviously that is going to affect your CSA scores. And it just kind of keeps cascading, right?
Well, here's what's interesting, too. It's 595,000 uninspected miles. 350 million guys, miles over the road for the fleet. That means that almost 600,000 of those miles were uninspected, meaning 600,000 miles on the road, which for some people is 2/3 of a year. Not 2/3 of a year. I mean, it's a lot of miles. It's a lot of miles.
Yeah.
There are people who do 2,500 miles a week. And that means that's a lot of miles of people getting behind the wheel of a truck and not looking at it and not moving the ball down the field. I mean, but that's the kind of data that you can look at and say, as we reduce the amount of time where pre-trip does not occur, you can begin to say, let's get that number down and then do comparisons about what your safety record is. If you get to the end of the second year after that and you get that down to 5%, should be at 0, but let's say you get it down to 5%, you can really look and say, hey, did these pre-trips help? And here's the other thing that's so crazy about it, too. It's cost effective because you may think, I'm getting in that truck and I'm getting out of there and I'm getting to where I have to get to. But it's like you're costing the company money because, remember, the other thing is, too, tell me if I'm wrong. You don't do the pre-trip. Truck goes out there, wears down a little bit further, and maybe some of the damage, while not catastrophic, has suddenly become more expensive because the thing that could have been replaced cascaded into other parts of the truck and increased the maintenance cost of it.
Oh, that's exactly right. And you've got that downtime. A lot of times you're having to, instead of fixing something right there on the yard where you have a shop, now you may be 3 or 4 hours from home and you're on the side of the road on the shoulder waiting for a tow truck or a repair company to show up. That's when it gets really, really expensive. And no driver likes to sit on the road for a long time. And just going through the roadside inspection process, Jimmy Mack, what started this for me was, hey, we've got a hazardous material basic that's in the 90 percentile. the 80 percentile, when you go red, you're in the red after 80%. And for me, I was hovering between 92 and 96 for a long time. And it was like, why in the world can we not eliminate placarding violations? Like, that is so mind-boggling to me. Well, we started doing the pre-trips. Well, guess what? When you don't even walk around the tractor or the trailer one time, how are you going to notice that 2 placards are missing, which is an out-of-service violation, by the way? And then you get caught up, 2 hours from home, and you're like, I've only got 2 placards on this trailer. I found out because an officer told me during a roadside inspection, and now you're sitting there waiting for dispatch, somebody in the pickup to bring you 2 spare placards. That kind of thing is the thing that I'm talking about. Just doing it right the first time, every time, avoiding those violations. To me, that's what creating a culture of safety is all about. It's about getting drivers to just on board to do the right thing right off the bat and just kind of build that into their DNA. But yeah, that's what started this whole process for me was, hey, why am I missing? How are drivers missing so many of these trailers that aren't placarded correctly? Well, there's your answer. When you got 17% not walking around the unit a single time, well, it's pretty hard to spot that you're missing 2 placards, right?
Okay, I'm going to tell you, let's go with my Freakonomics take on stuff too, because it sets up the next kind of thing, the number 2 spot.
Love it.
So my dad, as I've been telling you, went from 300 and about 20, 30 pounds. Remember, he's 79, 80 years old when he starts this.
Yeah.
He goes from 330 pounds. He's now at 260. He's now got he hasn't worn jeans in a decade. He now wears them all the time. He got these great new shirts that he got from both, he got a whole bunch of stuff, from Men's Warehouse and some easy kind of work clothes from Walmart and a whole bunch of other stuff too. And it all looks good on him. He's like color coordinated for the first time in his life. He, and the first time in a long time, he really is, cares about how he looks. Here's what's funny. He actually now wipes down his chair, his big recliner chair, before he gets in it. And I'm like, well, that's kind of new for you. And then he comes up and vacuums in front of the chair when he does it. I'm like, what's up with this? And he goes, well, he said, I got these new shirts, I got these new pants, and I really don't want to get up and have something ground in or stained on them. And I thought about that because the next thing is tires. And I thought about my good friend Dean Croak, who's been listening this morning, the Grumpy Pete in the chat room. And he's really a big stickler for cleaning his tires. And people don't realize that having a professional attitude about how you dress, how you comport yourself, and I'll use the example. So somebody decides I'm going to stop dressing like I'm from Lower Slovovia. Doesn't mean you got to wear fancy pants clothes behind the wheel of the truck, but I'm going to dress well.
Yeah.
And I need to dress well because I need to present myself facing forward, which means I'm going to clean my seat, which means I want to make sure the inside of my cab is as clean as possible so I don't screw up the clothes I've got to make business contacts in or make, relationships kind of thrive. And then I start saying, well, it's important for me now that I look good on the inside of my truck and the outside of my clothes. I might want to start touching things up. You start spraying down tires. You start making sure your tires don't look terrible as you kind of get your truck in order. Guess what you also start realizing? When your tires are overinflated or when they're underinflated, because it's the second biggest violation, isn't it? It took me a long time to get there, but I got there.
I love that you come full circle with that. You're right. Tires were cited well over 300,000 times last year, and those are mostly for not having proper underinflation or low tread depth. Those are the top 2. And a lot of drivers, these tractors, you're putting hundreds of thousands of miles on these things. A lot of these new tractors reach 1 million miles within 3 years just because they never turn off, especially in a slip seat operation. And if you don't take time to do something other than thump it with a tire tool or tire thumper, if you don't actually put some kind of air inflation device on there to actually check what that PSI is, they're not using tire thumpers on the side of the road. So if you've just thumped that tire for the last 3 months and not checked it, there's a good chance in winter and summer when it collides, a lot of places like in Arkansas right now, 2 weeks ago, Jimmy Mack, it was, in the 20s. And now this week, there's some days where it's in the 70s. That absolutely impacts PSI in tires. And yeah, it's something that officers really focus on because a blowout, when you're pulling 80,000 pounds, 65 miles an hour down the road, catastrophic things happen. So yeah, tires come in number 2 And it is one of those things that's absolutely preventable by just walking around, checking your tires, that what you just described. If you're cleaning your truck, getting it ready for operation, you're trying to look your best every day, you're going to notice those little things like that and take that extra care to properly inflate those tires and not be one of those almost 400,000 people that did get a violation.
We worked
So
down.
yeah, great point.
We worked down. I'm going into really left field with this, and we're not going to get to everything, Josh. And I want to leave a little time to say thank
sure,
you.
man.
But I wanted to tell you, when we worked down at the courthouse, there was a lot of attorneys that drove me absolutely up the wall, as you probably can imagine. There were a lot of other attorneys, though, on the other side of the equation who I just thought were outstanding. I mean, both in the way they comported themselves and in the way they kind of presented themselves. One of the things that I was always impressed by was there was this guy. He had a deliberately disheveled look. He was very well dressed. He held himself very well, but he had this very kind of casual look. And he used to explain to me that he had a lot of clients who came from working class backgrounds, and so he would deliberately dress himself in a way while being impressive would make them very comfortable. One of the things he always did, though, I watched him one time. He was talking, and he pulled out this billfold, one of those big long ones, from his from the inside of his jacket, and he opened it up, and I could see he had a whole bunch of stuff in there. It was almost an organizer of sorts. And I said, "That's really, really cool." He said, "Yeah, it's my last thing." And I said, "Well, what do you mean your last thing?" And he said, "You know, when I get up in the morning, I make sure that I look exactly right, because if I'm representing my clients, I want my clients to feel confident, and I want the courtroom to understand I'm a serious customer." He said, once everything else is in place, he said, "These are my bills, my correspondences, everything I have to get done for the day." And I was thinking about this as I was going over your notes too, because if you're in fact dressing the part, if you're in fact keeping the truck inspected and upstanding, it also means that once you do all of that, you can then check your paperwork, because man, this is a big violation as well too that I wanted to touch on. Get your damn paperwork in order. Make sure that you are who you say you are, so that you can just present this to people. That unlike just being an American citizen where they can't just walk over and go, "Papers, please." If you got a DOT number, the inspector has every right to say, "Papers, please. Come on, pal. Give me the information." And people didn't have proof of annual inspections. They didn't.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. That, you know, that getting ready for the proof of annual inspection, absolutely number 4 on that list. And there were almost 250,000 violations for no proof of annual inspection. And, you know, Jimmy, I love the way you kind of teed that up. Starting your day off right, kind of consistent, having that tractor look the part. When I was in enforcement and when somebody would hand me their document pouch or document book, you could just tell what kind of interaction I was going to have within the first 30 seconds. If a guy's in a, you know, and I don't necessarily dress as one thing, especially over the road, but if you're a city driver, something like that, you're public facing with you know, the public. You know, if you look somewhat, you don't have to look professional, but just look put together. And the most important thing at a roadside violation or roadside inspection, just having your truck in order. If an officer's got to go through and pick up 5 different pieces of paper because you've not taken the expired pieces out in the last 5 years,
oh my God,
it just looks sloppy, right? But if you've got all your stuff in order, the inside of your cab is clean, and you're respectful. And I'm telling you from experience, I do not care what any other cop says. I've done this. I've been in the industry for a long time. How you interact with the cop a lot of times dictates what's going to happen. Because officer discretion goes a long ways. And if you're very polite to that officer and you're respectful, that officer is going to cut you, is more likely to cut you a break than an officer that is just a jerk. And I don't know how officers are so scared to admit that, but it is. It's like officer discretion really does come into play. So it's so important for drivers just to be respectful. Everybody has a job to do. So for drivers, that job in that particular instance is just to look the part and be polite and be respectful. And a lot of times it's always going to be better. It's not going to make it worse being polite, right? And we always talked about that with our drivers during roadside inspections, the importance of bedside manners and just being polite and courteous and not being argumentative. You know, so many drivers, when I was in enforcement, would like to argue, would like to just comment, would like to almost create some type of drama, and it just really set things off in a bad way. Or they would just defer to, well, you have to call my company for that. I'm not in charge of this. Well, when you're the driver, you're in charge of everything in that cab. And so an officer's not going to want to call headquarters to get a document to make sure that it's not expired. You know, you probably get a violation for it. So we talk about what you said all the time. I think that's so important, to look the part, be courteous, respectful, and have the inside of that cab looking the part. It makes such a big difference on the road.
How many times have you said, and I'll give you the New Orleans version of it, and then we got to get out of here. I'll give you the New Orleans version of it, but how many times as an inspector, how many times in an interaction with somebody have you said to somebody one version of this or another? Look, you're obviously a serious customer who's got your stuff together. There's one or two things I notice here. If you promise me you'll take care of them, we'll let this kind of go today. I'm giving you your go and sin no more moment. Get this taken care of, and we'll see you on the other side. How many times, Josh, have you done a different variation of that, being like, look, you've got your stuff together. You know what you got to do. Take care of this before the end of day. Take care of this by next Monday, no later. Don't get caught here, because the next guy you run into ain't going to cut you some slack. How many times?
It was as many times as I could possibly do it. My job as a cop, you know, I told people this all the time. It was like, hey, I am not all cops are bad. We're out here doing our job kind of deal. But I cut everybody I could a break, especially in this kind of moment where it's like, hey, there's one or two things here that you need to check on or ask about. You don't have to write, and officers do not like writing citations.
Oh, God.
Most of them don't. I had no joy in that, taking away somebody's livelihood. They're working a whole day for free, basically, sometimes, if it's actual citation with a monetary amount. So for me, like you said, I love just cutting people a break. It showed that, hey, officers are human too, and that's really what it takes to make the world go round. Everybody kind of getting along and doing their part. And drivers can do their part just by kind of being prepared and being courteous. It's not more complicated than that, right?
Josh, I actually ran us way out over time here. I don't care. I'm so thrilled to have gotten to know you. We will be in touch over the next couple of weeks when something new comes up. This, by the way, guys, this conversation that Josh and I are having, we didn't even get to point. I mean, there were so many points we could have gotten to. There is a longer conversation to be had. I'm going to figure out a way to make that happen, Josh. You can go and sin no more because you haven't sinned. Go ahead and have a great day. Go have a great weekend. And thank you for all you've done for Radio Nemo. Really appreciate you, bro.
Appreciate you guys so much. Have a great day, Jimmy Mac.
You too, sir. Guys, we're going to take a quick break here. I'm going to come back on the other side. I got to get a phone call queued up. Hold on tight. Don't get thrown to the wolves. Go to truckdown.com. Man, those folks were good to us. Truckdown.com, been doing it since 1997. 50 states, 8 provinces. And speaking of people who've done good for us, check out these dudes right here.
Did you know it's extremely easy to join the Wreaths Across America mission to remember our fallen heroes, while at the same time honoring those who are currently serving our country and their families? Plus, you're helping to teach our younger generation about the value of freedom. With just one $17 donation to Wreaths Across America, you're sponsoring a fresh Maine Balsam Remembrance Wreath. They've really become a symbol of America's respect for those who bravely served and are no longer with us. To sponsor your wreath, just visit wreathsacrossamerica.org. That's wreathsacrossamerica.org.
Exceptional value and exceptional values. That's Bennett Trucking. A core commitment of faith, family, and freedom has driven Bennett to being the leading provider of innovative, integrated transportation solutions, both at home and abroad. Bennett's values are not just compatible with providing high-paying jobs and unmatched customer service. They're inseparable. If you're looking for an employer or a partner who believes the best business model is being a model citizen, then Bennett Trucking is the place for you. Go to BennettIG.com and find the folks who share your values. In a video game, if you get enough experience, you level up. And when you level up, you gain more skill. And with enough skill, you beat the boss and win the game.
Sounds a lot like trucking, doesn't it?
Except in trucking, you don't beat the boss, you become the boss. And if you want to be the boss, you gotta meet the boss.
And that boss? Carrier's Edge boss, Jane Jazrawi.
Want your drivers to level up? Carrier's Edge has the training, comprehensive safety, compliance, and best practices on one website. It's a simple subscription with no contract and no commitment. Learn more. Try it out. Level up. CarriersEdge.com.
Hey, come on! We're starting the game!
All right, I'm coming. Wait for me. CarriersEdge.com.
From the wee small hours of the morning to the crack of dawn, RadioNemo has been there with you.
Whether you've got the overnight or you're the first wheels on the road, RadioNemo's been where you need us to be.
Providing the laughs, giving the facts, playing the tunes, and keeping it rolling.
We've been your light in the darkness, your first cup of coffee, and a voice of sanity.
Semi-sanity, actually. We're all a little crazy here. Crazy for the men and women who keep this country going and moving and doing.
Crazy for trucking, crazy for truckers of all shapes and sizes.
Is that a fat joke?
Not if we can help it. Because it isn't just about the rules and regs. It isn't just about the day-to-day. It's about your health, your homes, and your hearts.
So we wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you from everyone at RadioNemo for sticking with us, standing by us, and keeping the traditions rolling into the future.
Thursday.
Welcome back to Road Gang Radio. Join Jimmy Mack and Lindsay Lawler's Gang of the Airwaves by subscribing to RadioNemo on YouTube.
We celebrate all kinds.
Make it official. After all, if you're listening, you're already in the gang. The Road Gang.
You are in the Road Gang, and we are thrilled to welcome Garen Groff, Public Information Officer over at the Arizona DOT. Lots of stuff to kind of dig into over there. They've been really good friends to us over the time here. We've been doing this on RadioNemo. Guys, in case you don't know, RadioNemo is going to officially sunset next Friday. RadioNemo of North America will be no more. It doesn't mean that I will be no more. It doesn't mean that Lindsay will be no more. It doesn't mean Dave won't be hanging around someplace. Who knows what he's up to, playing drums, playing congas, playing a whole bunch of percussive instruments, probably to the logical song that he seems to have 1,000,001 instruments for. If you never checked him out playing his bongos during there's a pretty good video of him up, by the way, doing a video for Hawaii 5-0 with his band Jedi Mind Trick. He'll be spending a lot more time playing music, hanging out with Miss Nemo, and making his way into what we all are going to be wishing him an early retirement that he never got a chance to enjoy because 2024 and 2025 didn't go the way we expected, and he ended up sticking around a little bit longer. One of the things we've always really enjoyed, though, is kind of digging in with our friends from the ADOT, Arizona Department of Transportation, and Garen joins us this morning. Hey, Garen, welcome back. Good to have you. How you doing, man?
Good. Good morning. It's good to be with you.
So let's talk a little bit about expanding the truck parking, because I got to tell you right now, there are people in the industry, people who are really pro-trucker, who believe that if we could simply expand truck parking, that a lot of the problems that are also happening on the road in regards to detention time, in regards to sleep deprivation, in regards to safety, a lot of things would cascade to a better place. And you guys have made a commitment to this, have you not?
Yeah, the Arizona Department of Transportation has been studying this issue for several years. And we're glad to share with the public that we've made some progress by expanding parking at the Sunset Point Rest area, about an hour north of downtown Phoenix on I-17. We have other rest areas where expanded parking is under construction and will be opening either later this year or by early 2027.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a technical question because, the idea is that, so you don't want to overpromise, but there is a chance that it happens earlier rather than later, is what you're telling me. But you don't want to predict construction schedules or acts of God and all that kind of stuff. Is that what you're telling me?
Right, but we certainly have projects that are online. We're going to have 4 different rest areas where we have projects that will be opening this year into 2027.
Okay. And the thing is, too, the ones that are opening this year, can you kind of talk about what that's going to look like? I mean, because we say expanded parking spaces, but a lot of times, and DOTs aren't the ones who are really guilty of this, but sometimes states do things where it's like, well, you can park here. You guys are actually doing it right. You're making a commitment to really making sure that people have places to go where they know they can be safe, right?
That's right. So at the Sunset Point Rest Area, we added 19 new spaces to the existing 27 spaces. This is an overflow lot. It's made out of gravel that's on a grid system. It allowed us to construct this lot at about half the cost of a traditional parking lot. So we were really able to, make the most out of a relatively small amount of money to get those extra spaces online. Elsewhere, we've got 4 different areas up in northern Arizona, just west of Flagstaff on I-40. We're looking to reopen a rest area that was completely shut down a few years ago. It originally had 21 spaces. We'll be opening those back up and constructing an additional 18 spaces. So basically, we'll have 40 new spaces just west of Flagstaff.
Wow. And I want to kind of go back because you mentioned the idea that you did it at half cost. I don't think people are aware of how much one piece of truck parking. I mean, Dave and I have made a point of telling our listeners this, but it bears repeating. Truck parking is not inexpensive. It is not inexpensive in regards to real estate and land and what it takes to kind of set it up, right? So cutting that number in half, we're not talking a 25% savings. You're telling me that you cut the cost of what it would take to build additional parking spots in half? That's a big savings. I mean, can you kind of put that in perspective for people? Can you do that for us?
Yeah, this was a $4.1 million project. So, we saved millions of dollars constructing just 19 spaces. And also another thing is because the water can trickle through that gravel, we don't need to set aside area for drainage. Now, if you've ever been to Sunset Point, this is a just spectacular scenic rest area that, looks over a mountain and a valley. Unfortunately, there's very little land available. So by using this grid system, we're able to use pretty much every last square inch of land up there, as opposed to having to use a retention basin. So that we really got a lot of bang for a buck with this approach.
Well, and the other thing is too is like we always kind of make a point here on the show of saying of the idea that states are the great laboratories of democracy, that one state gives way to another, and that each time a state does something innovative like this, I guess, look, everybody's got their own geography realities, everybody's got their own realities of how they set up rest areas, but do you feel like some of the savings that you guys have been able to kind of enact, which also, the other thing about the kind of stuff you're talking about is it allows you to accelerate how quickly you can get stuff online. So we'll pocket that for a second, but do you feel like there's something you guys have done here that other states can replicate, that maybe neighboring states can say, hey man, they saved a lot of money, maybe we can do this too? Or is it unique to Arizona?
Well, this is unique to a warm weather climate.
Yeah.
This is not an area where you can run a snowplow because you'll damage the grid system. So in northern Arizona, in the colder areas, we can't use this. Certainly throughout much of the country where they have freeze-thaw cycles, this isn't practical. But in warm weather climates, this is a practical system.
So we're looking at you, Texas and New Mexico. We're looking at you, Texas, New Mexico, and California. You guys take a hard look at what's being done right over here, and kind of make an effort to kind of study when people succeed at this as well too. Let me ask you this too: how much driver input did you guys have when you kind of put this stuff together? Because this doesn't happen overnight. You just don't walk in and the people over at the Arizona DOT just go, we'll get more parking spaces done. This actually has to be kind of. There are so many stakeholders in this. Can you give people a sense of all the different, both public and private sector institutions that you guys have to work with to make this stuff a reality?
Yeah, so ADOT went through a 2023 statewide truck parking implementation plan. This was assembled with public input and working closely with the trucking industry. So we've been reaching out with truckers. We've also been studying where truckers have been parking when rest areas are full. So we look at the exit ramps and shoulders where people are parking just because there isn't any other place. And we use that information to say, hey, this is clearly where we need some additional parking. What's the nearest rest area where we can expand it? And, what's the demand? And so when I was just talking about that I-40 rest area where we're reopening a closed rest area, I can actually go over 3 more rest areas where we're doing expansions. We're looking at where the demand is and then building as much as is possible with our available funding.
Yeah, and like I said, that's kind of the real kind of gold standard to that, is that the idea is that you're playing a couple of games. One, you're getting buy-in. 2, you then have to figure out how to get the biggest bang for your buck. And then the other question I have is, how do you know if something works? Because, one of the craziest things about infrastructure or parking areas or rest areas, anything that affects the highway, you have other examples that you can kind of point to, but you don't know if something works until it's actually there. I mean, and I was kind of curious about that from the DOT's perspective, any DOT's perspective. How do you know, how much certainty do you have that something actually will be effective? And along with talking on shows like this, since you work in the, in getting the word out, how do you guys make sure that people on the road in Arizona who make a living driving through Arizona understand that these amenities are now available for them?
Well, it should be, we hope it's clear when people pull into these rest areas, they can see, as they go through it on a regular basis, they can see the construction happening. They can see that these new lots are opening. We'll also have additional signage. We do reach out to the trucking associations. We, work with putting out news releases, putting out information to targeted groups. So we are hopefully getting this out to the people who most need this information. And, we make appearances on shows like yours as well to, make the most of all of our communication tools.
I don't think people really understand something either as well, because at the end of the day, you deal in roads, you deal in the movement of commerce and goods, you deal in the movement of human beings across time and space. That time and space being the time and space of Arizona, sometimes Pacific time, sometimes we'll see. But the real reality of it is, it's just like opening a movie. I mean, you've got to get together a really good marketing campaign to kind of say coming soon. You've got to give evidence of it in different outlets, but also in the reality of making sure, in the same way that when you get a new service station, they have to put up signs, and the same sort of approach works. I mean, it's the same sort of get out the information approach as it kind of goes on. I just wanted, like I said, it's the last time that we're going to be doing a show. This is one of the last shows of Road Gang Radio. I just was kind of curious about you. What do you do for fun? What do you got planned for this weekend? And what is the world looking like on your end of things?
Oh, boy. Well, I'm going to be enjoying the warm weather in Phoenix this weekend. It's almost a little too warm. Some of us have been running the air conditioning, so we'll just be glad for that. But we're going to be actually recording a ADOT podcast later this afternoon to talk about truck parking, to get the word out even more. And if you have any ideas you can share with us to help reach out to truckers, we would certainly welcome that. You can reach out to us on social media. We're very active on Twitter, on Facebook, at Arizona DOT. We're certainly welcome to any input on what we can do to get the word out. And I'll share a little tidbit of information. I was just reaching out with our rest area manager yesterday about this new truck parking on I-17. And he said, since it opened a few weeks ago, that lot is full every single night. So truckers have discovered it, and they are taking advantage of it.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. By the way, speaking of weather, the city of New Orleans has finally gotten warm, and it couldn't have come at a better time. I don't know if you know this, Mardi Gras is this weekend. Mardi Gras really kind of kicks into gear tonight and then goes all the way till Tuesday. So we're actually warning people, don't drive down here. Go find some parking in Arizona, guys. There's not going to be any parking down here for about the next 5 or 6 days. But that's like I said, it's an accomplishment to a large degree that you've gotten this stuff up and running, and you've got more stuff in the pipeline all the way up until 2027. Final question, I'll let you shuffle off this radio coil. Can you kind of tell us, is there a particular place that you guys are targeting or looking at in regards to more truck expansion that you're really excited about, that you really think is going to really make a difference? It might take a little bit longer time.
So, I mentioned earlier the one by Flagstaff. We actually have 2 rest areas, one on I-40, one on I-17, that had been closed for a long time. We're reopening those lots here within the next year. And then I-10 west of Phoenix, we'll be adding 125 spaces at the Burnt Wells rest area by late 2026. And on I-40 west of Flagstaff at the Meteor Crater rest area, we'll be adding 133 spaces in 2027. So we're making some really big pushes to expand truck parking, and this is what's kind of either under construction or just about to be under construction. We have other things that we're looking at that we'll hopefully be tackling in future years. So there's a lot more to come.
I for one am impressed. I know how, like I said, I know the cost effectiveness of it. I know that it actually does pay itself off, but that it's often kind of hard to kind of explain to people what it costs to build parking. They get a little sticker shock, and you have to kind of talk yourself blue in the face, explaining that the long-term effects on the overall economy of a particular region is immense, and that it's a drop in the bucket to kind of honor it. But congratulations to you and everybody over at AZDOT, because, man, that's heavy lifting that often pays itself off rather quickly and makes the world a safer place for every single man and woman who drives a truck across the country. Garen, thank you so much. It's great to talk to you. Go have the best of weekends, and hopefully we'll run into each other soon. And by the way, check out their podcast. You can find it over at azdot.gov. It's worth a listen to. I've actually checked out a couple of episodes as well. So thank you, Garen.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too as well, man. Hey, guys, you can give us a call at 615-292-6366. Of course, those last 4 digits spell Nemo. I don't think I'm going to keep that number. Whatever I do, wherever I go, I think we're going to sunset that number as well. Our good friend, Steve, says, if a cop doesn't write tickets, how do they get promoted? I got to tell you, that's a good question, actually. It's, there's partially a joke there. I mean, my dad used to always say as cars would fly by, sirens flashing, we'd be on the corner walking out of a grocery store or something. You'd see the police officers kind of rolling by with the flashing lights and the sirens, and he would just bellow out, "Hot donuts are tasty." Let that land for a second. There are a lot of things that, people will make comments about law enforcement officers, LEOs, that often feel very, very cynical. Ticket quotas, promotions based on how many people you bust, using the ability to kind of run lights, to go get lunch, to strong on people into giving you perks of the job and all that kind of stuff. And Josh made this point as well, too, is the fact that there are examples, by the way. That is not just a wives' tale. There are examples of places that give people commendations for writing a ton of tickets. But I want to talk about what Josh talked about. Okay, so I'll use Jody as an example because this doesn't happen a lot for him. You get pulled over. Your stuff is together. You hand the officer your stuff. He or she looks at it and says, "Look, there's a couple of things on your truck that I could cite you for, but everything's in order here, and you're a guy who really kind of takes care of all that stuff. I'm going to let you go take care of it. Promise me you will, though." The other reason you're doing it is not just to avoid paperwork. You are doing it to avoid paperwork. You're doing it to avoid a whole bunch of stuff. You're also doing it to avoid sticking it to somebody who actually makes the road a safer place. You look at somebody and say, "This guy makes the road a safer place. This gal makes the road a safer place. These are good people." And it's not just a judgment call based on, and by the way, what you can't do, what you can't do. But what you can do is you can say, okay, go and sin no more. The other thing is, too, remember, it frees up time to catch somebody who's actually driving their truck 88 miles an hour. You're freeing up time to make sure that somebody who's in a Lamborghini who thinks it's funny to weave in and out of traffic over in Arizona as you're trying to make your way to the rest area. Big thanks to Garen, by the way. It gives you time to make sure you get that. You'll often hear one of the biggest frustrations. People will get pulled over for speeding 1 or 2 miles over the speed limit and then have people blasting by them. A lot of times letting people off with a warning, telling people to get their affairs in order and take care of stuff often frees up time to be able, it's not that you don't want to do your work, it's that you're freeing up time to give out real violations, real tickets, real, what the hell do you think you're doing? To really keep an eye on keeping the road safe. Because remember, every violation that you give, what it really is, if you don't understand that you're just giving violations because you spot them, is not the same thing as people, look, dude, I'm writing you up. Why? Because this isn't safe. Because you are literally, 1 more mile, 20 more miles, 100 more miles, 1 more run from causing a terrible accident. You're getting violated. You're done. There's a difference there. So I want you guys to keep that in mind. Most of you do. And I know our good friend Steve was having fun, but it's a good question. Speaking of good questions, we always know Packrat has them, so we're going to drop him in now and say good morning to you, Packrat. What's the word?
Hey, good morning, Jimmy Mac. I just want to mention, did you probably heard that Sonny Jurgensen passed away?
I did, and by the way, this is a really interesting story. My brother John was heartbroken because, I don't know if you know this, when the Saints become a franchise. Sonny Jurgensen, by the way, guys, for those of you who don't know, and shame on you who don't know, you should all, by the way, look up what kind of improvising maniac Sonny Jurgensen was. Sonny Jurgensen was a guy who actually played better with a hangover, to kind of put Sonny Jurgensen in perspective. But I wanted to say my brother John, when he was growing up, was old enough to remember when the Saints would get the bottom of the barrel. I don't know if you know the entire history of the New Orleans Saints. They're an expansion franchise, and they were owned. Yeah. They were owned by a guy who never should have owned them. But New Orleans didn't have a well-heeled millionaire that actually could do it. So they brought this guy in from Texas, who was always threatening to move them from Texas. Which, of course, the NFL and Rozelle was like, "Are you out of your mind? We want to have Super Bowls in New Orleans. Stop!" And of course, the owners of the Cowboys were like, "No more teams here. Houston, it's enough." He was always threatening to move it. Jurgensen played for the New Orleans Saints at the end of his career. Can you imagine a worse coupling than the city of New Orleans and Sonny Jurgensen? So that's He was a character. He was a character. Yeah, he was. He was something else, to say the least. He was something else. I liked him very much, and he's a guy that, for all the beatings that people took, some reason Sonny Jurgensen got to his 90s with very little, his wits about him, was able to kind of contribute to the culture of football in the aftermath, and one of the great things too, one of the most upsetting things about when Vincent Price died is, I don't know if you know this, but Michael Jackson was a ruthless businessman, and they gave Vincent Price the choice of either just getting a flat fee or getting points on the Thriller video. If he had taken the if he had taken the points, he'd have been a millionaire. He'd have been a millionaire in the blink of an eye. And one of the things that happened is that Price finally, because Tim Burton wouldn't let him do it, he was going to work for a flat fee on Edward Scissorhands, and Burton was like, "Take points, man. I'm giving you points. Take them." He took them. The problem was that he took them, and then his family benefited from him, but he never did. And that's very, very sad. Jurgensen lived long enough to actually, like Mickey Mantle and like Willie Mays, finally be able to get a taste of some of that endorsement money and some of the bigger money that they were never entitled to because they existed before free agency and all that kind of stuff. Jurgensen, may we all live as long as Sonny Jurgensen, is my thought there. Packrat, I want to give you about 2 minutes to kind of wax poetic here because we're going to run out of time and Washington Trucking Week's coming on. What else is going on?
I just had an interesting situation happen yesterday. I got an LTL load that I'm bringing out to Idaho and Oregon, and I go through the scales in Chester, Indiana, to the platform, and I'm reading it says 84,500 pounds or whatever. Oops.
Oops.
And I sat there for about 35, 40 seconds. It said stop, and all of a sudden the sign came up, said exit. What? So I went to the pilot there in Gary, Indiana, at scale. That sure as heck, it was confirmed. I was over 4,000 pounds over gross. A minor full pounds.
Go and sin no more. By the way, go.
I'm so surprised that they let me go. But anyways, I called dispatch and we arranged to go to our cross dock, and I took off 11 skids, so I'm 22,000 pounds lighter now, so it's still good.
By the way, you take a load off Fanny and you put the load right on me, brother. I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you. And I've seen pictures of you. I've seen the way you present. I've seen the way you look. I've seen the way you face forward, and I know exactly what happened. Go on. Did they give you a long look or just kind of pass you through?
Well, I couldn't see them. I just saw the sign up at the top of the scale that said stop, and which means you stay on that platform until they tell you it's time to go. And so I don't know. I think maybe it was shift change or something like that, and maybe they didn't want to stick around and do all this paperwork because my dispatcher was telling me they had this situation happen last week, and the standard operating procedure is you go out back and you can't leave until you get under 80,000 pounds, which means you have to bring in another truck and take off freight and put it onto another trailer and so on. And he said it cost him $4,000 that full pause.
4,000 pounds, $4,000. Take a load off Fanny and put the load right on me, brother. One step ahead of the sheriff, man. Well done. And by the way, go and sin no more, dude. Somebody, there's the other possibility that somebody said, I'm looking at this situation. This guy's going to get this taken care of. He understands now. Let's just let him go. I ain't got time for this today. There's so many worse things in the world.
And I took care of it.
Thank you, brother. I got to get you out of here. Thank you. It's good talking to you.
Okay, J-Mac. All the best.
All the best to you, Pack Rat. All the best to everybody out there. Speaking of all the best is on his way. Our good friend Colin Long is going to be here for the second to last, the penultimate Washington Trucking Week. Here we go. Hold on tight. Don't get thrown to the wolves. And we'll be back on the other side of this. It's Road Gang Radio. Fighting right till the end. Hey guys, We Should Write is still up and rolling, so give it a chance, check it out. She's got a great one up now. It was a guest on our show who now has done a full hour with Lindsay.
17 Sapp Brothers Travel Centers are known for great food, hospitality, and mom-approved showers and restrooms. But don't forget the service centers. Sapp Brothers ASE certified technicians can repair nearly any issue in shop or roadside, including axle repair. Dig into your free steak dinner with your oil change. That's a Sapp Brothers tradition to thank you for your business. Tires? Sapp Brothers will beat any competitor's advertised price on tires. And download the Sapp Brothers app for exclusive promotions in the shop, restaurant, and store. Your spot under the coffee pot is waiting for you at Sapp Brothers. St. Christopher Truckers Fund provides free health and wellness programs for drivers to help prevent some common medical conditions seen in the industry. These programs include diabetes prevention, Rigs Without Cigs, a tobacco and nicotine cessation program, Healthy Habits for the Long Haul, a 12-week total body wellness program, a vaccine voucher program that includes free flu, shingles, COVID, and pneumonia vaccines, and GPS, Get Preventative Screenings. That includes free at-home cancer screening tests. These programs are available to Class A over-the-road semi-truck drivers. For more information or to register for a program, visit the St. Christopher Fund website at truckersfund.org.
Thursday.
Check out the new over-the-top lineup at participating Country Pride and Iron Skillet restaurants. 3 gigantic sandwiches loaded with flavor. Try the Chicken Parm Stack, the Big Country Combo, or the Ultimate Smash Melt. The Ultimate Smash Melt. 2 delicious smash burger patties, surrounded by 2 grilled cheese sandwiches. 2 sandwiches in 1. Visit your favorite Country Pride or Iron Skillet restaurant and come hungry.
Available for dine-in only at participating Country Pride and Iron Skillet restaurants inside TA or Petro Travel Centers. Welcome back to Road Gang Radio. Join Jimmy Mack and Lindsay Lawler's Gang of the Airwaves by subscribing to RadioNemo on YouTube.
We celebrate all kinds.
Make it official. After all, if you're listening, you're already in the gang. The Road Gang.
By the way, you should continue to subscribe over there, because if you want to be kept in the loop about what's coming next, at least on my end, Jimmy Mack World, we're going to use that information to get you guys informed. We're not going to sell anything to you, don't worry. We're going to sell our next show. We're going to sell whatever comes next down the line. But I have to tell you, I began this journey almost a decade ago with a fellow named Rod Knopfsinger. And I can't believe it has gone on this long, to be honest with you. Our good friend Colin Long, you guys know him, of course. He is, I guess the regular recurring guest, the Director of Government Affairs of OOIDA. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. But Colin, how you doing, man? How's the world treating you?
I'm great. And look how much we've upgraded at OOIDA since you started talking to Rod Knopfsinger. I'm going to get in trouble for that.
You do know I talk to him every week, right? You do know that Rod is actually, that Rod is such a friend of mine that we actually, when Rod used to come on, my wife Claire would deliberately create sound bumpers of Notre Dame victories, defeats, and embarrassments across the board. I think the most embarrassing thing is that, so when I'm starting to wrap the show up, as you probably can guess, we have, I don't know if you know this, RadioNemo, over the course of a decade, has had 40 original segments, often the first of their kind in the industry, from Highway to Health, you guys as well, Washington Trucking Week. And there are a lot of other platforms now who literally just, rather than coming up with their own programming, which is interesting too, because I can tell you right now, there are still what I would call undiscovered countries in regards to programming for truckers. But we kind of came up with this stuff, and I was literally making phone calls because Claire's like, I cannot reschedule everything by myself. I just can't do that. If you're asking me to kind of push everything, we were scheduled out 2.5 months. So we had to push like 2.5 months of programming into essentially 2 weeks, or maintain contact with the publicist and all that kind of stuff. The one thing nobody bothered to tell me was the first person I called was George. And my wife, I told her, yeah, I called George, and he's going to take care of it. And she went, you do know he's on paternity leave, right? And I felt like the biggest bunghole to ever walk the planet. I'm like, I'm not going to call him back. If I call him back, I'm screwing with him on paternity leave. So somebody's got to tell George, for me, that now I understand not to call George while he's on paternity leave. Just wanted to put that out there.
Well, I will pass that message along. And frankly, you know George pretty well too. He was on paternity leave, but he was itching to get back into things, and I had to tell him via text a few times, stop getting re-engaged until you're back from paternity leave. Focus on the task at hand. He's thankfully come back now. We've welcomed him back to the D.C. office, and glad to have him back on board, although I think he's a little more tired than he usually is, which is hard because George is never really tired.
No. As a matter of fact, I have to talk to George at some point, because this is the absolute truth. Somebody actually posted the ugliest thing you can possibly imagine about me at a Matt's, and Tara and I were looking at it and going like, well, no, Tara's like, I was there for that entire conversation that never happened. And then we literally went back. I was accused of being really, really ugly to a couple of people there, and he actually invoked George being present for it. Tara found a picture of me and the two people who made the accusation with George in the aftermath of that terrible moment, with our arms around each other and smiling. And I'm going to say, hey, George, remember this picture? George had nothing to do with this, by the way. But now that the settling of scores can begin. By the way, it's interesting too, Colin. You've often, despite the fact that I get very passionate on this show, I don't know if you've noticed this. You know me behind the scenes a little bit. Can you imagine what me on the radio is going to be like about a month and a half from now, with no gloves off, not having to actually uphold the standards that Dave Nemo has said of being decent?
It's going to be wild. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it as well, too. I really am, by the way, because like I said, what's happening right now in the trucking industry is, people say, well, no more of this Wild West stuff. And I hear people say that, and I go, are you kidding me, dude? This is literally the Wild West in regards to, like, Wyatt Earp showing up to Dodge City. There really is a sense of that's going on right now. And, of course, I'm setting up non-domiciled stuff. But, even 3, 4, 5 years ago, when, you and I were doing this when we first started, there was that residue of same stuff, different day. This has not been the job for you guys for the last 2 years. This is, the last year and a half in particular, has been a real what in the name of sweet Jesus is going on. And some of it is very, very good and very, very encouraging. But there are other things, by the way, that I'm sure give you and your members pause. I'm not going to make you name those right now. But let's kind of talk about the rule that came out on the 11th of February.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, I think from a wider perspective, the last several administrations over the last 10 years since I've been here, we've been pushing FMCSA to crack down on some of the bad activity, the non-compliant activity that we have seen in the industry and been frustrated by the lack of movement. And in the last year and a half now, I think we're like, whoa, can you guys slow down? We can't keep up with you on a lot of this stuff. It's really been a frenetic pace, and I think it's been really beneficial for us as an organization because a lot of what the agency has done mirrors what we are super pleased to have Secretary Duffy in place and especially Derek Bars in place at FMCSA, who are taking things very seriously and are using their authority in a proper way by cracking down on non-compliance within our industry, by cleaning up training requirements and doing meaningful reforms that will help promote safety. And I think the non-domiciled CDL issue is one of those top issues right now. And we have had a bit of a breakthrough this week. The interim final rule that we have been watching for a number of months has now gone final, which is, I know it's going to sound confusing to folks who aren't in tune with things in Washington, D.C., but the rulemaking process has run its course, and we expect the final rule to be published in the Federal Register as soon as tomorrow, which would then start a 30-day period for implementation. So before you know it, the interim final rule is going to be final. It'll be the law of the land, and we certainly applaud that because of its focus on cracking down on the issuance of non-domiciled CDLs. And let's not forget, DOT spent a lot of time early in this administration auditing the states to determine how are they issuing non-domiciled CDLs. And unfortunately, they found what we suspected, that a lot of it is done in a non-compliant manner. So the administration has taken steps to reverse course on that. I think we've already seen the impact in the states. Some states have suspended their non-domiciled CDL program entirely, but this final rule is really going to be a game changer when it comes to non-doms, and we're pleased it's in place. Well, I should say we're pleased it's about to be in place.
Yeah, this is kind of interesting too, that I kind of want to touch on this, is that the non-domicile, okay, let's go back, this is what is really interesting to me, is like, and one of the things I am not a football fan of politics. And by what that I mean is like the people who have a team, and when their team does something wrong, they bend over backwards to say, no, that's not right. Or they go back 10 years earlier and say, you did the same thing. Okay. One of the problems with non-domiciled CDLs is that I need everybody out there listening to realize it is the worst impulses of both parties. That the events that lead us to the non-domiciled CDLs is a plague on both your houses. And in the sense that, and also works against the very core of what the two parties claim to represent. This feels like it's a corrective, because for too often, and you ain't got to comment on this, you can say, I have no opinion, Jimmy Mack. But this is one of those things that for too long, every single, and there were some really good ones too, every single FMCSA had was about opportunity. And whether that was a supply side or that was a demand side, it was always about opportunity. It was either about cheap goods or giving companies a chance to run on the cheap, or whether it was about expanding the number of people who were part of the franchise. And as you can hear, I'm blaming everybody. You can hear somebody's getting assigned that stuff. This is the first time, I would say, probably since LaHood, where you have somebody who is actually interested in enforcement, where it's kind of like, no, we're going to focus on enforcement. We're not going to focus on opportunities or expanding the number of drivers or giving people a chance to get the cheapest available goods, because at the end of the day, cheap labor means cheap goods. This is the first time somebody's saying, no, road safety is tantamount, and protecting the men and women who make a living on the highway is the first priority, because if we don't do that, ain't nothing going to happen until we take care of this. That's been the kind of approach of Bars, right? I'm here to enforce the law, right? Is that fair?
And I mean, yeah, bravo to Derek Bars. He's been doing an incredible job. And I think some of our members, we supported Derek Bars' nomination before it really advanced in the Senate. And I think some of our members were like, well, yeah, we appreciate that there's someone with industry experience, but we're a little cautious about it being from the law enforcement side of things. And we get that. We naturally get that. But I think he has really capitalized on his strengths, which is enforcement of safety requirements. I mean, we've seen it with ELP, we've seen it with non-dom, we've seen it with training schools. I think there are other moves coming out of FMCSA soon that we will see are in line with this approach that Derek Bars has taken, and we certainly applaud it. And I think it's also important to note that previous administrations prioritized folks like large carriers, folks who make incredible profits off of these corporate motor carriers and safety advocates in some cases. And I think what you're seeing now with this Department of Transportation and with FMCSA under the leadership of Derek Bars is a prioritization of drivers. I mean, drivers have been the ones saying, hey, we've got serious concerns about ELP because we're seeing what the lack of proficiency does on the highways. We've got serious concerns about non-domiciled CDLs because we see what untrained and unvetted drivers do on the highways. We've come through the training process and we see there are a lot of deficient training schools out there. So bravo to the department and the agency for finally prioritizing the views and the priorities of the men and women who make their living on the road. And, we've always said, it's been a clear message from OOIDA. If you want to improve safety, you want to improve recruitment and retention, and you want to build up a profession of trucking, listen to the truckers, and they're doing it. And now I think we're seeing the benefits of prioritizing drivers over corporate trucking, safety advocacy groups, and the like.
Yeah, and let me just make this really clear. I hope you guys hear in Colin's tone. He's not saying these people should mind their business. Look, the people who have safety concerns should be able to express their concerns and should have a seat at the table. The people who actually want to maximize their profits for their shareholders, we live in a capitalist country, they should be able to, voice their concerns and push their agenda. Nobody is saying this. We live in a democracy. We don't live in an autocracy. We don't live in a place where what I want, I get what I want. But what's happening now is the fact that it's like, look, we really appreciate where you're coming from, but you don't drive on the road. And I mean, let's face it. Let's face it. There are very few people who run a lot of these large carriers anymore who really are drivers or are so far removed from being behind the wheel they don't understand. A lot of the safety advocates don't understand that a lot of the accidents that they're keying on were caused by the four-wheeler. Don't understand and this is even harder to accept. Don't understand that a lot of their thinking is counterintuitive. That a lot of their thinking, is the sense that I've always said this. Somebody needs to tell the safety people, and by the way, there are people who do this. Tell the safety people if they really want to be helpful. Start literally pushing the DOTs as they're doing in Arizona to build more damn parking spaces. You really want a safety culture? Really be safe. Start with the safety of the drivers, and then everybody else's safety will flow and follow.
Yeah, and I'm not going to give the safety advocates too much of a black eye because they have been really good on issues like truck parking, no doubt about it. Right. But I think their focus primarily on regulation and mandates and technology requirements over the years has led to a reality where some of the more simplistic solutions to improving safety, like enforcement of English language proficiency, like a crackdown on the non-compliant issuance of non-domiciled CDLs, have kind of gotten overlooked or overshadowed or potentially even ignored. And now I think that you're seeing these steps taken on all these issues out of FMCSA. You're not really seeing safety advocacy groups voice opposition to them. And I think that's an interesting thing to point out. And on the other hand, you have these large carriers who have been talking about a driver shortage for so long. It has really opened the door for things like lax enforcement of ELP, non-domiciled CDLs being issued to unvetted drivers. And as a result, I think, frankly, they got caught with their pants down. And now we have an FMCSA who's taking these concerns seriously. And you see large carriers now changing their tune on a lot of these things and getting on board simply because there's no real good argument against enforcement of ELP and a crackdown on non-domiciled CDLs. I mean, who's really opposing these things? I say that now we're probably going to get a lawsuit filed against this final rule that's going to be published tomorrow from the same folks who had filed lawsuits against the interim final rule back a few months ago. But by and large, I mean, safety advocacy groups are not opposing these efforts. Large carriers are not opposing these efforts. So things are moving in the right direction with, frankly, a lot of folks in our industry on board, and I think it just demonstrates that technology is not going to solve everything. Heavy-handed regulation isn't going to solve everything. Treating the drivers like the experts they are and taking their concerns to heart and moving forward in ways that address them is really going to change the dynamics. And we're super happy that that's the reality we're in today when we had been in kind of a parallel reality for so damn long.
Well, I'll tell you this too. There's a couple of things. That I want to kind of get off my chest as well too. Mm-hmm. One of the problems, and I'm by the way, I'm not targeting the safety people here. I'm targeting how people target their grief. The other thing is to imagine you have a company where you've come up with a newfangled device that actually does something to quote unquote keep people safe, and you would like it to be legally mandated. Can you imagine taking that device to people who are in the midst of terrible grief about losing a loved one, a spokesperson for a safety advocacy group, and say, hey man, I've invented this thing, and if it had been invented and had people installed it on their trucks, your son would be alive. Now, that's the kind of cynical stuff that often happens. I'm not, and I can cite examples. No, I won't do that, but that's the kind of cynical stuff that happens. The other really funny thing that I wanted to kind of take an axe to as well too is what I would call the oopsie and the game of politics. I don't know how you feel about this, but this administration has been incredibly lax about a lot of other efforts in regards to protecting workers' rights, but they also understand that this is their voting base, and so they're looking at the suits in the trucking industry and going, yeah, we like your money, but we got money coming from other places. We actually want to protect our voters. I mean, there is a calculation there too that nobody's really talking about. I won't put you in the middle of that, but the administration is doing something where good politics and good policy. It's that rare moment. It's that rare moment. Good politics and good policy match up where it's like, yeah. I know where my constituents are, and I'm not going to screw over that particular group of constituents. I mean, there is that at play too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. And frankly, they should be listening to constituents first and foremost, and they are. But going back to my previous point, I mean, I think they see that listening to drivers can have real benefits when it comes to improving safety, when it comes to improving driver recruitment and retention, when it comes to improving supply chain efficiency. I mean, these aren't unpopular policies. They just haven't been embraced previously. And now that they're being embraced, I think a lot of folks within our industry from other stakeholder groups like large trucking organizations, like safety advocacy groups, have gotten more comfortable with the fact that drivers really do know what they're talking about, and they really do have proposals that will improve safety, even if we fight against things like unrealistic timelines for the implementation of automatic emergency braking and underride guard mandates that are being proposed that just make no sense.
Can I tell you, the underride guard thing makes me insane. Makes me insane because as an old Irish hustler, let me tell you something. The moment they told me that, I'm like going, oh, so basically you can figure out a way to get engaged in insurance fraud and not jeopardize your life. Just want to make sure we're clear on that. I'm sorry, man. That's like why is that not obvious to everybody else? It's like we're going to build something on a truck that allows somebody to engage in insurance fraud and not get killed doing it.
Yeah. I mean, that's an argument we haven't made, but that's an argument I like hearing because, people are still interested in underride guard mandates. And I think it gets back to your point about if you can market something pretty well, someone here in Washington is going to embrace it as a solution for improving highway safety.
Well, don't you realize that if you simply had built this, your child would be alive, and then suddenly you got a spokesperson who's the recipient of immense amounts of grief. They've done nothing wrong, and you're telling them, and you're yelling at them, saying, "Hey, wait, listen, just give people parking and more time to sleep." You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not rocket science.
You know, this isn't a heavy lift, guys, and it's one of those things too where I just feel like some of the stuff that gets proposed from a safety regulation standpoint, especially when it involves technology, really, really feels predatory on grief. And I know that sounds like
that's fair.
I mean, like I said, I get to be everybody's id. You know how they had that Keely and Peele thing where one of them played Obama and the other one played what he really wanted to say? I feel like I to some degree get a chance to kind of articulate that kind of stuff. Colin Long joins us for the penultimate Washington Trucking Week. I'm going to ask you, it's not about complimenting me here, by the way. What have you do a lot of this stuff here. You do a lot of, advocacy, and you go on other shows and all that kind of stuff. Have you had fun doing this segment? I mean, we do a lot of it, man. We're almost done with it.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm not the most outspoken. I know this sounds bad for a lobbyist. I'm not the most outspoken. I don't like the spotlight. I was really reluctant having to do radio when I came on board at OOIDA 10 years ago. And this is one of those shows where if we need someone to do it, I'm always going to be willing to do it. And frankly, I think my coworkers have become reliant on me doing it because they know I enjoy it so much. I've always had a good time doing this show, and it's been one of my favorites, certainly, because we do have such a good rapport, and we do have such a good understanding of what's going on both politically and in trucking. And I think it makes for a really, hopefully, I think, a really what's the term? A great show. I mean,
compelling.
For lack of a better term, a great show. Something that people can listen to and take something away from because it's giving perspective that they might not otherwise hear. And yeah, I've had a good time. I've enjoyed myself.
I'm gonna let people know, and we'll get the rest of these up as we begin to wrap stuff up. We're a little short-handed here as we begin to wind down, but almost every episode of Washington Trucking Week since the beginning of this new platform is up there. So if you guys have missed any, and by the way, I went back, because I'm a masochist, I went back and listened to about 2 months worth, which is about 8 shows. And it's amazing how sometimes we repeat stuff, but sometimes we get to listen as the ball moves forward too, and you actually get a history of legislation in trucking and resolutions and budgets and all that kind of stuff that plays itself through. It's been my pleasure. Like I said, I will make you laugh, and I'm letting my listeners know. So when I was starting to wrap this up, a number of my family members, who, as you know, we've talked off air, are very involved in politics, and a couple of them are like, hey, if you ever want to, we got a couple of policy things and speech things. I'm like, get away from me, Satan, right now. Don't talk to me. I don't want to do any of that nonsense. Good God Almighty, because I'm going to end up writing Bulworth speeches. What I'll end up writing for people now. It's
well, as long as you're writing for someone else, that's fine. Just don't do it yourself. It's not worth it.
Yeah. No.
I mean, run for office. Truckers run for office.
Yeah, truckers should run for office, by the way. Truckers, if any of you truckers ever really want to run for office, you got to come talk to me. Don't talk to Colin, because he'll be like, just when I thought I was out, hey, pull me back in. Come talk to me and we'll give you tips. By the way, it's something that's interesting, too, I'm finding, is the fact that I have to tell you, the number of people in the public sphere, even people that I thought were originals, I have to tell you, man, things are too controlled message-wise. I think that I really think that people who run for office need to speak their mind, need to say exactly what they think.
I mean, amen.
They need to be informed, and take their chances, but they need to be better informed. And I've never really understood, like I said, I was horrified when I discovered there finally is a trucking caucus. I was just stunned about it.
It took a while, but we're there and we're excited about it.
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked about it too. But to be honest with you, I'm like going, why hasn't this existed before? And I have to tell you, the votes, like I said, I won't lie to you guys out there. I'm not the biggest fan of this administration. Wasn't crazy about a lot of stuff that went on in the last administration. But I got to tell you, man, you want to talk about smart politics? The focus of a few people within the party in power to focus on these trucking issues, but also to create organizations and networks of people in Congress that are focused on this is one of the smartest political plays I've seen in 2 decades.
Yeah, totally. And we're seeing good results because of it.
Exactly. Because here's the thing is they were already queued up, Colin. It's like, well, how do we get up to speed on this? I don't know. Give OIDA a call. And here's the thing. I'm not just throwing OIDA out here, two guys, by the way. There are a number of organizations that made this really easy for people. I mean, there were a lot of people like you guys who were like, well, how do we get involved in trucking? How do I become an expert on the subject? I don't know. There's like 3 or 4 organizations out there who are literally queued up to help you.
Yeah.
Just crazy. My friend, you're welcome anytime into my life. If you ever make your way down to New Orleans, I know how much
Thank
you love you. By the way, it's Mardi Gras weekend, and the weather is going to be gorgeous. 72 degrees, Mardi Gras day with blue skies.
Oh, stop bragging.
Well, dude, you get to brag about living in the Emerald City. I get to brag about living in the city of New Orleans. Colin Long is I guess you would call him, he's got that main character energy. Some people claim to have it. You've got that main character energy, my friend. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. Best of days. Go have a great weekend. Talk to you later.
Same to you. Bye.
Bye. We're going to take a quick break here. Come back on the other side as the second half of Road Gang Radio kicks into gear. I miss Lindsay. We'll get a chance to talk and figure some stuff out. I know that she's in the middle of putting stuff together. Guys, please continue to follow We Should Write, right? I mean, they got great stuff coming up over there. It's putting together a whole empire, an empire of the thinking, an empire of the creative, an empire of the empathetic, an empire of Lawler. Please go check her out. If you follow her on the socials, good for you. If you don't, what is wrong with you? Get on that now.
It's one simple act that helps Wreaths Across America fulfill its mission to remember,
honor,
and teach.
Sponsoring a wreath, one more wreath.
Means one more adoring father, one more loving mother,
one more heroic son,
one more brave daughter,
one more beloved family member,
one more dearly missed friend,
one more American,
one more wreath upon the gravestone of someone who served the cause of freedom,
honored for their sacrifice,
never forgotten,
always remembered,
through one
simple act.
One simple act. Go to wreathsacrossamerica.org/RadioNemo and keep the mission moving forward. 17 Sapp Brothers Travel Centers are known for great food, hospitality, and mom-approved showers and restrooms. But don't forget the service centers. Sapp Brothers ASE certified technicians can repair nearly any issue in shop or roadside, including axle repair. Dig into your free steak dinner with your oil change. That's a Sapp Brothers tradition to thank you for your business. Tires? Sapp Brothers will beat any competitor's advertised price on tires. And download the Sapp Brothers app for exclusive promotions in the shop, restaurant, and store. Your spot under the coffee pot is waiting for you at Sapp Brothers.
Thursday.
In a video game, if you get enough experience, you level up. And when you level up, you gain more skill. And with enough skill, you beat the boss and win the game.
Sounds a lot like trucking, doesn't it?
Except in trucking, you don't beat the boss, you become the boss. And if you want to be the boss, you gotta meet the boss.
And that boss? Carrier's Edge boss, Jane Jezraoui.
Want your drivers to level up? Carrier's Edge has the training, comprehensive safety, compliance, and best practices on one website. It's a simple subscription with no contract and no commitment. Learn more. Try it out. Level up. CarriersEdge.com.
Hey, come on! We're starting the game!
All right, I'm coming. Wait for me. CarriersEdge.com.
From the wee small hours of the morning to the crack of dawn, RadioNemo has been there with you.
Whether you've got the overnight or you're the first wheels on the road, RadioNemo's been where you need us to be.
providing the laughs, giving the facts, playing the tunes, and keeping it rolling.
We've been your light in the darkness, your first cup of coffee, and a voice of sanity.
Semi-sanity, actually. We're all a little crazy here. Crazy for the men and women who keep this country going and moving and doing.
Crazy for trucking, crazy for truckers of all shapes and sizes.
Is that a fat joke?
Not if we can help it. Because it isn't just about the rules and regs. It isn't just about the day-to-day. It's about your health, your homes, and your hearts.
So we wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you from everyone at RadioNemo for sticking with us, standing by us, and keeping the traditions rolling into the future.
Oh, yeah. Wrapping this sucker up. Road Gang Radio coming at you right now. Hey guys, welcome back to Road Gang Radio. Big shout out to our friend Lindsay Lawler out there, dreaming, scheming, coming up with all kinds of great stuff that she'll be sending your way, hoping to hook you in and get you writing, because when you write, it makes you write, is the best way to kind of think about it. That's a W and an R, but it's our way of saying if you sit down and write, even if there is no destination other than clearing your thoughts and figuring your stuff out, that's the way you should go. Guys, I'll get you the information about where you can check it out, but if you put We Should Write into any of your favorite podcast platforms, it's going to come up, including the latest edition of it, guys. You're going to want to check that out. Good stuff headed your way. As RadioNemo begins its sunset process, RadioNemo of North America will be here tomorrow and then all the way to next Friday. We're going to have one more Nemo Nation, one more week of Road Gang Radio to wrap up, say goodbye to a lot of our contributors. And then shortly after that, we should have some announcements. We should be able to kind of let you guys know where I'm going to be headed, where Lindsay's going to be headed, where, you know, all these people you've come to care about are going to be headed. It is simply the end of a long career. Dave Nemo is, you know, with no fanfare. We've tried that. We decided that the best way to do it was Dave was right. He said, I just want to fade away. We talked him into a big retirement thing. That didn't play out so well. Then we tried to pivot. We tried that. That didn't work out so well. So I'm going to go with Dave's inclination. I'm just going to go with a full hand and say Dave wants to kind of step back and go enjoy the rest of his life playing rock and roll. By the way, Dave is a drummer, which perfectly sets up, now you know where I'm headed. Our guest is listening going, what the heck is this guy talking about? Dave is a drummer, and I couldn't think of a better person to bring on as our next guest than Daniel Buckspan is joining us this morning. It's great to have you. He's a freelance writer, been doing it for 25 years. He's written for Fortune, CNBC, Condé Nast Traveler, and much, much more. He's the author of the Encyclopedia of Heavy Metal, the Encyclopedia of New Wave, The Art of Brutal Legend, Woodstock, 50 Years of Peace and Music, Ozzy at 75, Iron Maiden at 50, Rush at 50. He's also contributed books on ACD. If I kept reading his bio, guys, what I would do was I'd eat up the entire time. He's joined us before. He'll join us again in whatever new form we take. I hope so, at least. Rush and 2112, 50 years, a definitive anniversary tribute to one of rock's most influential albums. It was published on, it's going to be published this March. Comes out March the 10th. And we're very excited about it. I'm excited about it because I got an advanced book. Got a chance to go through this baby, and I'm really excited. You guys should be too. Welcome. It's good to have you. How you been?
Oh, thank you. I've been good. I'm very happy to be back again.
And guys, you can find out all about him at notoriousbuk.com, notoriousbuk.com, which, by the way, I love that. I love that for a website. One of the things that's so much fun about you as a writer is sometimes you're giving these big, broad pictures of a movement, of a moment, or a decade. And sometimes you're saying, hey, man, let's look at one particular group of people at one particular moment. Geddy Lee, Alex Lifeson, Neil Peart, that amazing, distinctive, clear voice, those amazing, everybody agrees, the greatest drummer of all time, or at least one of the top 5. Why did you pick this particular album, and why did you focus on it, and what is the continuing, ongoing appeal of a band much like Pink Floyd that sounds like no other?
Well, doing this album was actually my publisher's idea. And I had done Rush at 50 already, like a year earlier.
Yeah.
I thought, like, okay, that's done. I covered it. But when he came back to me with that, I had no hesitation whatsoever about taking the project. And what I was really happy about is usually when people talk about one Rush album, it's Moving Pictures. And I was very happy to have an opportunity to focus on a different one, like not the obvious one. But also, but beyond that, I mean, there's just so much to it, and there's so much depth to it. And as far as why people are still listening, 50 years later, but that's the reason. There's so much depth to it, and there's so much there. And you could own that record for 50 years and get something new out of it every time you play it. And Rush, there are not a lot of bands like that, where it's rewarding every single time you put it on.
I'm going to tell you something right now. One of the great joys of actually being able to go through this text was, and every time I get a book from you, it's I have, as you probably know from our conversations, have really extensive playlists. Really extensive playlist. But I often kind of leave things. I'll give you another example. Somebody had mentioned the fact like a week ago that it was the anniversary of Iggy and the Stooges' first album, and to go back and revisit that was kind of an amazing experience. To go back and revisit this as well, and I'm going to make a weird comparison, and then we can get to the specifics of the book. I kept thinking about Pink Floyd's Metal. And there's a moment in the second half of that album, and I think we've talked about this, where something kicks in. You can hear what they're going to become in the whole first side of that album, but something it's as if they go to the dark side of the moon in that album, and then they come out the other side, and you can almost see Roger Waters and David Gilmour and the rest of the crew looking at each other and going, "Wait a minute, we got something here." This album, 2112, and you make the argument in the book, this album is when Rush becomes Rush. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, totally. I think Metal also is a really good example where you're talking about, I think, Echoes,
yes.
The epic track on side 2, and it's like I think exactly the moment you're talking about in the song where they become something else that they had not been yet in that moment. And with 2112, with Rush, there were hints in the previous albums that they had made that this kind of thing was coming. But they were hints, they were suggestions and insinuations. Here, it's right there, front and center. They even put the epic track first, which is like, "Hi, we're committing commercial suicide. How are you?" Even Echoes, that's on side 2. Because even Pink Floyd might have been like, "I don't know, let's give them some short ones first before they, dig into the meaty epic." But this one, they're like, "Nope, here it is.
Nope.
Start with this."
Nope.
But it's not. It's an over 20-minute song, and you just never feel the length for a second. It's totally involving. You're in it the whole time. It's engaging the whole time, and there really isn't a moment of it that's wasted. There is not a note of it that's wasted, and that's something you can really only get with some experience.
Well,
and go ahead.
It's form content too, because I'm sorry I keep going back to Floyd, but as I went through the book, I kept thinking about the final courageous decision. The idea that there has to be a courageous decision involved. In many ways, you could make the argument it's hard too, because everybody thinks that Sgt. Pepper's is the moment where the Beatles kind of have that moment. But man, I got to tell you, dude, Rubber Soul is when they start kind of going, you know what, something else is coming. And in the same way, what is different about this album, and I think separates this from something like Rubber Soul or even the second side of Metal, is the fact that they had, in the case of the Beatles, they have to release Rubber Soul and Revolver. I think I got the order right there, in order to get to Sgt. Pepper's. In the case of Pink Floyd, they've got to do Echoes and watch the impact that the second side has before they can get to Dark Side of the Moon. These guys say, screw it. And that opening song is literally, you're going like, man, it's not an act of suicide, but it is a riverboat gamblers kind of pushing all your chips, because, man, if it collapses, there's a lot of bands that tried some really freaky stuff in the 70s, and it blew up in their face, and they never recover from it. They never recover. And they, on the other hand, roll the dice, and it comes up sevens,
Yeah, sometimes, the best decision you can make is just be yourself.
Right.
And that's exactly what they did, and it paid off for them. Calling it commercial suicide, to me, that's more about like the music industry's perspective on something like that. For them, it may have been a little bit of a Hail Mary pass, but they thought they were going to get dropped by the label. They thought the record was not going to sell. They thought it was just too weird and nobody gets it. And it's like, well, okay, if that's how it is, then this is our last hurrah. And they just went for it. But you can hear that when you listen to it. When you listen to it, these people sound like, very committed to what they're doing, and everything is really well thought out and really well structured. It wasn't just like some angry outburst or something like that. There's anger in it, but it's I don't know. It's just all played out so well and so thoughtfully. I must, however, my friend, differ with you. because I think that Rubber Soul is my favorite Beatles album. So so I'm not quite where you are on that. But a couple of people I've talked to have compared 2112 to Sgt. Pepper like many times. So yeah, I mean that's absolutely a valid comparison, and it needed some runway to get there. Absolutely.
Can I tell you my favorite? And actually, you and I are not far apart on this. My favorite song album, where I think the songs are just perfect, is Rubber Soul. My favorite album by the Beatles is the White Album. Not because it's funny. My father-in-law and I got in an argument. He said, half those songs aren't any good. And I said, they're not any good if they're listened to by themselves. I said, if the album is listened to in its totality. That's the other thing, too, is that this is Rush really creating a total album as well here, too. That's the other thing that we don't often talk about anymore because we are now in the era of streaming and bits and pieces and all this kind of stuff. The idea, though, let me put this in perspective for people. We're talking about an album with 6 songs. And the idea of anybody releasing a 6-song album where it's a real album and not just, an EP or something that has 15 minutes worth of songs, it's a different thing entirely. But the idea of releasing an album with only 6 songs is, I want to go back. Let's just go back for a second because I can get totally into the weeds about everybody else's music. But as you pointed out, they think they're going to get dropped from the label. It's a Hail Mary pass. Explain the events historically that get them to that Hail Mary, a sense of what I would call... Because The Who has that moment in the late 60s where they find out that they're $100,000 in debt when they thought they were about $10,000 in debt and said, screw it, and just pushed all their chips in. But talk about where the band is before this album comes out and what the urgency behind it all is.
Oh, it was just a very typical story of, your last album didn't do very well. Caress of Steel, the album before 2112, didn't sell very well. The tours, were not packed by any means. And, the music industry being what it is, it's, they have a limited amount of time that they're going to give you if you're in that situation, I do have to say over the years, the idea of Mercury, the label at the time, really leaning on them really hard, you must give us a hit single. We drop you or we kick you out onto the sidewalk tomorrow is not exactly true. A lot has been made of that they were in huge conflict with the label, and they weren't. And I talk about this a little bit in the book that, there were people at the label who really wanted to help them and really believed in them and even believed in 2112, Cliff Bernstein, who manages Metallica today, was at the label then, and he loved it. He loved the record. He totally got it. He totally got what Rush was doing. However, having said all that, the record label's in business to make money. And that's just, the fact at the end of the day. And that is always looming over everything. So, it's not if you don't have a hit single the day we release this record, we're repossessing all of your homes. But no one likes the boss kind of hovering over them, being like, so how's that hit single going? That kind of a situation. They weren't. But over the years, the story has kind of turned into, something a lot more adversarial than maybe it really was. The label wanted a hit, absolutely. They wanted the record to sell, absolutely. But I think at the time it was maybe more of an awkward situation than conflict, open conflict. But still, at the end of the day, they want the record to sell, and it did.
Well, and the other thing is too, excuse me, is that you also kind of talk about this because you've literally got people who, look, those first 3 albums you pointed out are very, very good. They're very, very good. But I'm actually, you're going to probably kill me for saying this, they do feel a little derivative. And I don't mean derivative in a bad way. They just feel like a band, as good as those albums are and as good as the musicianship is, they're not quite Rush yet. And that you point that out, Rush becomes Rush then too. But there is a sense of, there's a lot of people who can do this. They just do this very, very well. You guys need to do something, but it's not the label that figures it out. They figure it out. So can you talk a little bit about, like I said, not just the decision to do a 20-minute song at the opening, because that's a different entity identity entirely, but the idea that what changes, because in a lot of ways people would call them Led Zeppelin light, little Led Zeppelin, all kinds of stuff like that, if I remember correctly. And this is, and you can hear it. If you listen to those first albums, guys, they don't sound like a tribute band. I don't mean that at all. Please, those albums are very good, but there's something that seems transcendent. And we talk about the breakthrough moment. This breakthrough moment comes from the opening moment of this album. I mean, they just come out swinging. What changes? What decision is made? Where do you think that hinge point is?
Well, on those first three albums, you can hear their influences, certainly, especially on the debut, Alex Lifeson is just doing Jimmy Page all over that thing, and again, that's not a criticism. I love that record, and I will defend that record until I die. I love that record. And I would say the same about, Fly By Night and Caress of Steel. There's excellent stuff on all three, but you can hear their influences coming through a little bit. 2112 is where you stop hearing them. 2112 is where it's like, this is, there are little bits of The Who that you can hear here and there, but like 95% of the record at that point, it's like, no, this is them. This is Rush, and this is all original expression, primary sources that all comes from them. And to me, I don't know that there was like a linchpin moment where they made the conscious decision that was what they were going to do. But, even when you look at those first three records, there's real progression, stylistically, from one to the next one, from the debut to Fly By Night, that's a huge leap, Fly By Night to Caress of Steel, that's a huge leap. So, they were always progressing anyway, and they were always seeking their own sound, so they were doing that anyway. And I think a lot of it was just the timing worked out right, that it took them just naturally to the fourth album until they figured out, like, okay, this is the Rush sound. This is who we are. Just because, they were young, and it takes a little time to nurture it, but a lot of that has to do also with, record labels they would sign a band, and they understood it might take a few albums for these guys to catch on. It might, we may not have a hit right out the door, but there was a sense, I think, in the 1970s of, Yes took 4 albums to really break through, and that's just, realistically, that's just how it is. Anything you do that's new, it's going to take you a little time to really, get your sea legs, as it were, and I really think a lot of it was just the timing worked out, that they had kind of nailed what their sound was going to be right when they needed to. Oh, and then when they found their sound and did it on 2112, they changed it on the next album. So, they were just always thinking of the next thing, and they were just always like, okay, we did that. What do we move on to now? The timing for that just happened to be right for 2112, yeah.
Well, and by the way, you said something really nice here for what my next question is. And like I said, I know some of the answers because I read the book, but I'm just kind of curious too, because, the idea of being able to change sounds like that, because once you do it once, a lot of people don't understand this, that once you kind of find your rhythm and you find your groove, if in fact you trust the people you're working with, whether it's behind the scenes or across the stage from you or in the studio with you, then there becomes more of an urge to keep experimenting, especially when an album sells very well. We can talk about that as well too. The idea that suddenly you have freedom. It's amazing how it's almost a pattern of we kind of muddle our way through. We take a big gamble, it pays off, and then once that gamble comes, people go in one of two directions. Either they are free to become who it is they want to become, or they continue to say, I get to become anybody I want, and kind of play around there. Talk about the dynamic between these musicians, though, about their relationships with one another, because you actually have at the center of this a man who actually is the child of Holocaust survivors.
Yeah. Alex and Getty are both, the children of immigrants from Europe who were uprooted because of World War II for one reason or another. And so, Alex and Getty are living in Toronto, coming from homes where the parents have funny accents and, they feel a little on the outside of, the rest of the people they go to school with. So they had a tight bond already just on the fact that they were like, there isn't really anyone else here like us. We are the only ones, whose parents have funny accents and serve us food that people don't eat here, like that sort of thing. And that just caused a very tight bond between the two of them. And they really discovered music together. They discovered smoking pot together, and just all these things that really was glue that kept them together, and it's not surprising to me that they're coming back out again now, just the two of them, because they've just always, the two of them have just always had this thing. Neil coming into it, they refer to him as the new guy. They always refer to him as the new guy.
I know, it's like ridiculous. It's great.
Yeah, but and it's his personality was very different from theirs. They referred to themselves as teenage idiots, and he wasn't like that. His face was just always buried in a book, no matter what. Per Gene Simmons, he knew all kinds of big words like condominium, and he was kind of an entity unto himself. But it worked, and the way that he was fit in with those other two guys, even though the background was different, and even though he wasn't always jokes all the time like they were. Just musically, it just worked. It just fit. And, they talk about, when he auditioned, Alex didn't like the way he dressed. So that was like a little bit of an issue. But musically, it was just, this is the guy. There's no one else who could possibly fit in with what we do. And, they just proved that record after record. Interpersonally, it just worked. And it, just what I've read over the years and what I've researched over the years and all that, they were very willing to give Neil his privacy, and they were willing to let him be a kind of a standalone guy. That didn't bother them. That didn't make them insecure. And I think that was really key to why the relationship lasted as long as it did. Like in the 80s, he started to be like, I don't want to be on the tour bus with you guys. I want to bicycle from city to city. And for a lot of bands, it would be like, oh no, are we breaking up? Is he separating from us? But they were just like, no, that's Neil. He's a kind of on his own sort of guy, and we're okay with that. And we allow that, and we make room for that. And that's really a big component of it, in my opinion.
No, I think it's important. I think the other thing that people don't really understand is that there's a lot of bands who kind of come unraveled because the work ethic of one or two of the most important members just sucks. And the work ethic in this band, these guys, you talk about the hardest working man in show business. You're talking about guys who like to maintain their chops. That's the other thing too. There really seems to be tell me I get this wrong, please, but there seems to be a rigor and dedication to the actual music. And I mean the actual music, not just the performance of it, but they stay sharp, right?
It's the only reason they're there. That to me, and that struck me a long time ago, the number one thing with them above all else is the music and delivering the best music they possibly can. That's all they care about. That is it. And that meant also, though, changing from record to record, which lost audiences sometimes. But that's the thing, is they were so committed to what they were doing, and so committed to no, we have to give something new on every record, that they were willing to alienate audiences if that's what it took. It was more important to them to be a band that progresses and grows. Than to just do, what they did not do was when 2112 got successful, was the next record was not, 2113. They didn't just keep going like that, it was very, and, Moving Pictures, obviously huge selling record, biggest record of their career. For them to release something exactly like it right after that, a lot of bands would have done that. They would have responded to having that kind of success with, we have to do the exact same thing next. And they consciously never did that. And I mean, at the time, it might have caused some fans to, there were fans who didn't like the keyboards coming in and that sort of thing. But we're sitting here 50 years later still talking about them. And I think the constant progression and the nonstop rigorous commitment to, we're giving 100%, not just to the performances, but to the songwriting, to everything, to the way the record sounds, all of it, to the exclusion of all else. That's them. If you needed to sum them up in any way, it would be that. And yeah, the work ethic was crazy. They would do like 25 nights in a row on tour sometimes in the early days. That would break anybody in half, but luckily they had cocaine. So that kept them going.
Kept them going, by the way. We're still talking about it today, among the many reasons, is that Daniel here has written Rush and 2112, 50 Years, by Daniel Buxapan, who joins us this morning, friend of the show. It's richly illustrated. It really is gorgeous. The layout is beautiful. It's a slipcase volume. It celebrates the album that propelled Rush from a Toronto cult favorite to a global rock innovator and sensation. Brother, best of luck. And by the way, it's the greatest April Fool's joke ever played on rock and roll. Only Rush would give people a great album. April 1st, it turns 50, right?
Yeah, best joke ever.
Yeah, I can't get enough of it. By the way, it's great, guys. If you have anybody in your life who is a Rush fan, it's must read. Anybody in your life who is just a rock and roll fan, just a fan of the boundaries and the frontiers of the music, it's a must. And by the way, I could easily say that about so many of other Daniel's books, which have brought me so much joy. I'm going to show up in some other form or fashion here, Daniel, but this is our last week and change on this particular platform as Dave Nemo retires himself. I can't thank you enough for all the contributions you've made and the joy that you brought Lindsay and I. Thank you so much, man. Somebody will be in touch soon, okay?
Thank you for having me. The privilege is all mine.
Thank you, sir. Daniel, of course, I got to hang up on you, brother, because I'm producing the show. So we're going to take a quick break here, come back with another great guest, guys. You know the drill. It's Road Gang Radio. We'll be back after these messages.
In a video game, if you get enough experience, you level up. And when you level up, you gain more skill. And with enough skill, you beat the boss and win the game.
Sounds a lot like trucking, doesn't it?
Except in trucking, you don't beat the boss, you become the boss. And if you want to be the boss, you gotta meet the boss.
And that boss? Carrier's Edge boss, Jane Jezraoui.
Want your drivers to level up? Carrier's Edge has the training, comprehensive safety, compliance, and best practices on one website. It's a simple subscription with no contract and no commitment. Learn more. Try it out. Level up. CarriersEdge.com.
Hey, come on! We're starting the game!
All right, I'm coming. Wait for me. CarriersEdge.com.
There are precious few nonprofits in the trucking industry, and even fewer that make a tangible difference in the lives of professional drivers. So thank goodness for the St. Christopher Fund. Since 2008, over 4,000 over-the-road semi-truck drivers have turned to the St. Christopher Truckers Fund when a medical issue took them out of work. The SCF steps in and pays necessary household expenses such as mortgage, rent, utilities, insurance, and vehicle payments. The SCF also provides free health and wellness programs for drivers. So find out how the SCF can help you, or help the SCF yourself. They'll turn your dollars and cents into that tangible difference for the professional drivers who need it most. Support our highway heroes with a donation at truckersfund.org.
Check out the new over-the-top lineup at participating Country Pride and Iron Skillet restaurants. 3 gigantic sandwiches loaded with flavor. Try the chicken parm stack, the big country combo, or the ultimate smash melt. The ultimate smash melt. 2 delicious smash burger patties, surrounded by 2 grilled cheese sandwiches. 2 sandwiches in 1. Visit your favorite Country Pride or Iron Skillet restaurant and come hungry.
Available for dine-in only at participating Country Pride and Orange Skillet restaurants inside TA or Petro Travel Centers.
The mission of Wreaths Across America is unwavering, remembering our fallen heroes, honoring those who are currently serving, along with their families, and most importantly, teaching the next generation about the value of freedom. And you can join our mission with a $17 donation that sponsors a fresh Maine Balsam Remembrance Wreath. Each wreath will be laid in honor of a veteran who gave the ultimate sacrifice for our nation. To sponsor your wreath, please visit wreathsacrossamerica.org. That's wreathsacrossamerica.org.
Thursday, 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 Thursday.
Oh yeah, Road Gang Radio still coming at you, at least for the next week and about 2 days on the eve of Mardi Gras. Hope you guys are enjoying the show out there. Sorry I can't respond to all the great texts, but you know, that happens sometimes because I'm trying to do 10,000 things at once. Dre will be back here on Monday. Hopefully we'll have Madison back in the game as well and get you guys more information about what is coming up next here. In some other form or some other fashion. Don't be surprised if the name Road Gang sticks around. I kind of dig that. Don't be surprised if there is something that I get a chance to kind of do my thing with. Don't be surprised if Lindsay gets a chance to do more of her things with as well. By the way, what we're doing right now, this is kind of my thing. I think you guys are really going to dig this. He's a retired Army veteran, now a full-time professional gamer with a large community of sports gamers. In particular, he loves Madden. He recently hosted the Madden charity tournament for veterans. Slim Ghost X on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. I would like you guys to give a big welcome to Greg Allen, Slim Ghost. Good to have you this morning. How you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing okay. How about you out there?
I don't have any complaints. Okay, so let's we can talk about a whole bunch of stuff here. We can talk about your I'll let you kind of get a dealer's choice here. Since it's a video game world we live in, you get to kind of curate your own experience. So let's kind of talk about it. We can talk about your service. We can talk about your love of video games. We can talk about where you came from and how you got here. Where would you like to begin as far as a superhero's origin story goes?
To be honest, I think it all connects or, all intertwines with one another. When I was spending time in the military, I would play games all the time in my downtime and, when we were between training modules or things of that nature. So I feel like, it was a crucial part of my life. I played video games even when I was younger. It just so happens I just started playing more competitively whenever, the Army stuff came around. And, from then I just kind of took off with it. I do feel like the football aspect, me being a huge football fan, being able to interact with the game and things of that nature could help. And it only got bigger. So I feel like they work closely together.
Okay, so let's talk about your love of football as well, because, anybody that loves Madden, it's interesting, too, because there are people out there who just love Madden who don't know a darn thing about the NFL. You're not one of them, are you?
No, I'm a huge Dallas Cowboy fan. I'm born and raised in Dallas, Texas, and huge Dallas Cowboy fan. That's probably one of my first loves. I don't think I've ever missed a Cowboys game. I missed two in my whole life, and one was because of my son's baby shower, and the other one was because of I was in the field in the Army. So huge Dallas Cowboy fan, and playing Madden, it closely resembles each other. So you get to be able to play with Dak Prescott and all the great Cowboys players of past.
Well, I also love the fact, I'm going to be really honest with you. I'm a New Orleans Saints fan through and through. Have been a Saints fan. And by the way, I've been a Saints fan since I watched them lose on national television in 1978 to the Oakland Raiders when they were up 35-14. All they got to do is finish the game off.
Oh, wow.
They got to finish the game off on Monday night. They are, I kid you not, they are 7-6, my friend, and if they win, they're in. That's the end of it. First playoff appearance. 35-14 lead at half, and then the whole thing unravels. And so I went through a lot of suffering to get to Mr. Breeze when he kind of showed up eventually, finally. But, yeah, that's the kind of stuff you carry around, and people don't realize that when you're a fan like you are, and you get to play as Dak Prescott now, but I bet you actually know about the ghost of old, right? I mean, you actually have familiarity that, anytime you love a team, you often kind of go back and have favorite players from people that you never saw play. Is there anybody like that for you? Do you get a chance in Madden ever play as a player that you never got a chance to see play?
Man, all the time. So in Madden, they have this game mode called Madden Ultimate Team where they curate, the old players of, old back in the day, legends and things of that nature. You get to play with them. Me in particular, I play competitively, and I will build the Dallas Cowboys of old, the Deion Sanders, the Emmitt Smiths. Sometimes, like, you might have a old school player like Ed Too Tall Jones on your team because he's a big guy, 6'9". So, I really, really appreciate the fact that, you can kind of deep dive into those moments and take yourself back in time and actually compete with those players on the field. That's pretty cool.
I'm going to put a little knife in your heart, and then I'm going to actually say something really fun that I think you'll actually enjoy. So the knife in your heart, of course, is the infamous, for you guys, for Dallas Cowboy fans, the NFC Championship game between Joe Montana and Danny White, the famous one that has the catch in it. You know the game I'm talking about?
Yes, I'm an avid studier of it.
Okay, so actually that Dallas almost won the game anyway. Do you remember what happened after that on the last Dallas drive?
I'm not sure. I think it was it the penalty?
No, it's crazy. It's crazy what happens. Now, White fumbles the ball on the last play. He gets sacked and fumbles the ball, and San Francisco recovers for the win. It's the play before, though. White hits Drew Pearson at midfield streaking. I mean, he is gone. He is a gone pecan, and this would be illegal now. Ronnie Lott reaches up. It's not illegal then, and does a horse collar tackle. But go back and watch it, dude. We watched it at my uncle's house, and I swear to God, we all jumped in our seat because we thought White was gone. We thought that Candlestick was going to go to silence, and Lott reaches up and barely pulls him down. People forget that's how close it came to the next Dallas dynasty. That's how close it came. That being said, I also can make you laugh because one of the great hustles that Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones pulled on the New Orleans Saints was by drafting Steve Walsh and then giving him to us. And he never panned out the way he should have. And Dallas got a whole bunch of new draft picks out of that, too. Sorry, I just...
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
classic Jerry Jones.
Classic Jerry Jones, classic Jimmy Johnson is what it is. I mean, nobody was a better horse trader than Jimmy Johnson. So, okay, that's serious. So you actually understand the ins and outs in Madden like an old pro, and you actually know the NFL incredibly well. Talk to our listeners, by the way, about your military service, because I want to set up the tournament itself, and I want to set up how these tournaments work. But tell people about your military service.
Yeah, I've always wanted to, serve my country. I've always wanted to do something honorable, and the best way to do that was I felt like to, join the military. I come from the inner city of Dallas, and sometimes you don't have really many options, and I just felt like the military provided me with options that I did not have. And when I joined, I wanted to do something that I could be proud of. So I took the infantry job. And I like to tell people, when you're going through that process of taking your ASVAB and figuring out what job you want to take, you have a lot of options. And at that particular time, I scored really high on my ASVAB. I had really high GT scores, and I could have picked anything. But I chose to pick infantry because at that time they said, hey, if we could build better leaders, the Army could be a better place. And they also gave me quite a big bonus. But I felt like I wanted to do something very, very honorable. And that was my basis of it. So I was stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia, home of the infantry. I think it's something else now. I don't know if they call it Fort Moore, but the old guys know it's always going to be Fort Benning down there in the land that God forgot. So I felt like I did my time good, and I ended up getting this disease called Crohn's disease. I'm sure a lot of you guys heard about it.
By the way, you're talking to a fellow sufferer. There are things, by the way, I can tell you right now, it's much better for us than it's ever been, but it's a pain in the ass, literally. Sorry about that.
It is, man. So some days we got tough, and I spent my few years in the Army, and then I ended up getting medically retired, fully 100%. So I'm always going to be advocating for veterans and things of that nature. So my job now is to try to bridge the gap between, helping our fellow veterans and, showing them the impact that gaming can have. And my experience having that blue cord and being able to serve my country, being able to understand the customs and what we do in our country and what we're fighting for, and then being able to translate that into a Madden world where I build a whole community and we all try to compete and have the same goal, have it structured, and I feel like it all works together, So with the background that I have, I'm able to talk to a multitude of people and bring a lot of people together, and I feel like that takes a big part of it.
I'm gonna throw another curveball in here. By the way, you guys can find Slim Ghost on X, formerly known as Twitter, and I'm gonna pick on you a little bit on Christmas Day. I'm sorry, not on Christmas Day. On New Year's Eve. You wrote, finding 32 of the best Madden players consistently every Tuesday is really difficult. You have to love this shite, as the British would say. Even still, these last few weeks have been so fun to do, though very interesting personalities. And I want to talk a little bit about finding the right kind of people to be in community, to find the right people to play with. What makes a great online Madden player? What makes a good person to play against? What are you looking for when you're building that community? Because there are people who are very good players who you don't want any piece of, and there are people who can't get a first down and can't move the sticks who you want to be a part of a community. Talk a bit about what you're looking for in regards to getting folks together.
Well, that part is simple. First of all, you got to have the will to want to win. You got to have the competitive desire to be great. It doesn't matter if you are just picking up the game or you're a seasoned veteran, or it is what it is. But the first thing you got to have is you got to have an ability to compete and to fight. If you have that burning desire, there's nothing that can stop you. So if you have that desire, then you're going to put yourself amongst the greatest to train to be the best. It doesn't matter where you come from. So I like that standard, and I feel like that standard has always worked for me. I don't really look at people that don't want to be seen. Sometimes, the people that want it, they'll come to you. So I just kind of built an environment with everyone can play and be great and be successful in. And when I'm able to interact with them, I'm able to, try to be a brother to them, be a mentor, and just give them resources and see how they're doing and things of that nature. So if like Deion Sanders say, I'm not hard to find if you want to be great. So in terms of Madden, anyone can learn the game. In terms of if you like football, trips concepts works across anything. Defense, great defense will translate to any game if you learn it, took the time to learn it. So it's the same thing with the NFL. I
am, full disclosure, not very good at those particular games. I'm very, very good at horror RPG, stuff like Resident Evil, stuff like the Soulsborne game, and I play them. I'm not just trying to relate to you. My wife and I play them. I mean, we get into all that kind of stuff. I had a couple of questions I don't want to call myself a Madden novice because I know what the buttons do. I know how to play. I also get boated by like 11-year-old boys. So, they just run me off the field. My nephews run me off the field. I was kind of curious to ask a couple of questions to somebody who's got no dog in my hunt. And what I mean by that is, do the rules of football apply? Because, there are things like Guitar Hero, where there are people who play on Guitar Hero and can kill it and could not handle a guitar to save their life. Do the strategic ideas of football actually apply in Madden at a high level? Meaning that, and tell me where you agree or disagree. So I tell people all the time that if you really want to have a great NFL defense, the edge rusher is great. That's terrific. And the idea you want to have somebody prowling in the middle, you want to have a good quarterback for your defense. But I tell people if your defensive backs can actually tackle, you're going to have a very, very good defense. Do those kind of rules apply when you're playing Madden?
In some ways, yes. Madden, I feel like they try to emulate the real game and bring those real life scenarios and schemes and concepts into the video game. So speed definitely matters on the field. Strength, definitely matters. Ratings definitely matter. And then they take those ratings based on, the public opinion, or to be able to match those ratings to that player, their real life counterpart. So say, for instance, Dak Prescott, if we're talking about Dak Prescott, he's a big burly quarterback. He's going to make a lot of the smaller DBs, miss. And, they have these superstar abilities where, they enhance those potentials on the field. Like Deion Sanders can take a pick six or play lockdown man-to-man coverage, and you have those particular players on the field, it could really change the game for you. And then a second part to your question, schemes, a bunch formation, you could be a coach. you can they came out and said Mike McDonald, the Super Bowl winning head coach, started by playing Madden. And it was a big article that they came out with, and he explained, and they were talking about how he used Madden and the plays on Madden to be able to, visualize his concepts and schemes. So you can use it as a tool, and most NFL guys play Madden and they study Madden because a lot of the same things are, translated to the NFL. A cover three and how they match buzz zones. And I don't want to get too in detail, but yes, I would say about 95% translates into real world concepts.
Well, and that's the other thing people don't really understand about Madden or the new college football game is that now the way the thing is set up is that you can GM this stuff. I mean, you can really get into the weeds in regards to you can run an NFL franchise essentially. If I'm understanding everything I've looked at and seen, my brother, by the way, is a good Madden player, as are his sons. And from what they tell me, man, you can get pulled into an absolute culture if you find the right community. And that's so much of what, you are part of that idea that if everybody plays, everybody wins. Can you talk about the therapeutic nature of it? Because you do work with veterans, you do work with people. This is a really great way to get people out of their shells as well, too. It's a really great point of initial contact and conversation. Talk about how this can actually help veterans, and then we'll talk about the Woodruff Foundation.
Yeah, when you are in the military, you have a lot of brotherhood, and you're not really, alone. But for veterans especially, it's big. It kind of keeps you connected, man. It keeps you like social and engaged. You meet friends and make friends, and you kind of spend a lot of time with them. Even if it's playing for an hour or two, that's community too. Like if you just, get a group of guys around, and even for an hour a day, you're practicing social skills, exercising your brain a little bit. So, I mean, all of that's important, being able to bring guys together. And even for you, playing Resident Evil or playing any game in general, if you could just kind of get a group of guys together and let's say, hey, we're going to, spend a few hours together, that right there is a big part of your day too.
Well, let me tell you something. When I actually get together, they get like about one guy and about 3 women on the couch screaming with me. That's what I get. I mean, that's the thing, too. I make the joke all the time. People say, why go to a haunted house anymore when you can actually just put on, like, Prey or Resident Evil or Control and then just put a screen so big, turn off all the lights or Alien, and play these games and sit in the dark. I mean, that's the other thing, too, is the fact that, I'm kind of familiar with you. It's important to keep a life balance as well, because even though you are a guy who really, really does a lot of this stuff as a spokesperson, you're out there, but you got to, it's important for people to remember that, this is not a good thing if you simply retreat into it and don't get out in the real world as well. It should be a springboard for deeper relationships in person and for staying active and working out. I mean, you strike me as a guy who actually takes care of himself, not just takes care of his team on Madden, right?
Oh, yeah, man, you got to stay active. Always got to stay active. I like to play, sports in person. I play a lot of basketball. I've always loved basketball. You do have to get out and be active for sure. But in terms of, I do feel like you get to have, especially if you have a community as big as like I would have, you see a lot of different people from around the world. And a lot of that stuff comes together. You meet different cultures, how they interact with one another. Sometimes you might meet someone that could help you in ways that you never thought, they could help you, and they live halfway across the world. So I do feel like that was important to add, the relationships that you can create, especially I'm able to talk to some of the best Madden players in the world. And sometimes they're regular people just like me and you, or they might be a celebrity or a NFL player also trying to be able to be just as good as as a player that's playing Madden all day. So you get to see a lot of different scenarios and events. I feel like that's important.
Let me kind of shift here now. We have enough time. And all of this is a setup for the work you've done with the Woodruff Foundation. And can you kind of talk about how you kind of got involved with them and what you kind of created for them? Because what you guys did was the beginning of something extraordinary. You were on the ground floor to kind of put this together. So tell people what you did there.
Yeah, with the Bob Woodruff Foundation, they reached out, potentially trying to create some interaction with the Madden community and bring a lot of veterans play sports games, not just in Madden in general. Madden is a really big title, but a lot of veterans play video games, sports in particular, and Madden. So they wanted to explore the space, and I run one of the biggest tournaments or competitive environments in Madden, period. I feel like I've been doing it for a few years, so they reached out to me and one of my good friends, Dub Dot. He's one of the biggest creators that we have in our game, especially live streaming on Twitch and content on YouTube. And they reached out to us, wanted to shed light on, see how they could help or interject some just some confidence into what they want to do. So they said, hey, we want to build a space where veterans can come play and shed some light on how we help veterans and give veterans resources. And I was completely on board with it. And it was an amazing event. A lot of people came out and we had a great time. We got to shed some awareness and give veterans resources and give them, just outlooks and things of that nature.
What do you got going on right now? What's got you excited? What are you working on next? What are you hoping to do? And it could be in the real world or it could be online.
What I do is now I'm actually exploring the world of basketball, NBA 2K. I do that in the off season, and I've done it for the last 15 years. I've always just every year we get a community and we kind of run a summer circuit of about 20 weeks, and we run competitive NBA 2K leagues, and it closely resembles the NBA. How it's structured and how it's ran. And we have 30 users in the league, and we all compete to try to win a championship. And over the last 15 years, it's gotten to be one of the biggest things in the 2K community also. So those are the projects I'm working on. I'm also growing myself as a man, getting closer to God and things of that nature, but also maintaining, my relationships that I've built over the years. I've been so blessed to be able to meet so many great people and experience great things in my life. And like I said, bringing awareness to helping other veterans get what they deserve and what they're entitled to, and being able to explore the world of gaming and being able to be a good father to my son and things of that nature, man. So the things I'm working on, always trying to be positive, try to move forward. And when Madden season comes around again, I will look to take over the game again and take over the nation and put people on display that want to be seen and give people opportunities and the respect that they deserve.
Tell us a little bit about your children and about the time you spent with them, and then we're going to have to shuffle off this radio coil.
I have a 4-year-old son. His name is Jace, man. He's my world. He's my world, man. I've always wanted a son my whole life, and he is one of the smartest people I've ever met. It's amazing how to see a small baby turn into someone. He is like a spitting image of me. He loves the Dallas Mavericks. At 3 years old,
I've seen the pictures and the videos. But go on, tell people.
He loves them. He's at 3 years old. He's very advanced. I don't know how is that possible, but he knows all the Dallas. He loves the Dallas Mavericks. He could tell you the whole roster from start to finish. He watches every game with me. He goes to the games. We're able to meet the players. Fortunately, we're able to meet all the players. And Cooper Flag signs his jerseys. He's so into it, man. He's like a super fan. He's 4 years old now. He actually knows how to play NBA 2K. He's really good, and people didn't believe me, but he's really good. He's really smart. And I love it. Every day he makes me smile. Every day, it's a new challenge, and he's starting to get that personality where he can make anyone laugh because he's growing into himself. He makes anyone laugh. He'll do something real funny and talk about, use all these big words. I'm like, how do you know that stuff? And it's amazing too, when he ever meets the players, he'll sit there and call their name out and they'll walk over to him like they know him. And I'm looking around like, what the heck? I'm a fan too, and they just walk over to him. Man, I'll never forget. He called Cooper Flag. Cooper Flag looks at him, walks over to him, and signs his jersey. I was, what the heck? So he's able to do things that I cannot do.
Slim Ghost has joined us this morning. You can find him at Slim Ghost X, by the way. And guys, just type in on all your socials, the Bob Woodruff Foundation as well. I want you to imagine you just completed your military service. You need to find a place to live. You don't have a job, or you've been injured and need care. You can't sleep. The bills are piling up. Your partner's struggling. Your family is strained. You don't know where to turn, or you just want to meet righteous people like the gentleman I've talked to right now. That's why the Bob Woodruff Foundation exists. By the way, before we get out of here, Slim Ghost, can you tell anybody where else they can go if they want to find out more about you?
Yeah, I try to post as much as I can on Instagram. So if you want to go to my Instagram, Slim Ghost World on Instagram, and also Twitch, man. Twitch, I live stream to a big community every single week, especially during the heat of the Madden season. And it is a good time, man. I'm hilarious, man. We have a lot of people in there, celebrities, regular people, and we all have a good time. And the Bob Woodruff Foundation also, man, they are a good cause. I encourage everyone to, take a look at the Bob Woodruff Foundation and see what their mission is, and, learn more about them so we all can connect together. And I really appreciate you having me, man.
Oh, you got it, man. And by the way, if you ever just want to talk, we're going to get, by the way, I'm going to, when we shuffle off this particular platform, we're going to get a whole bunch of other stuff going on. Can't wait to get you back on. Can't wait to meet you in person, by the way. And don't worry, I'm actually a Dallas Mavs fan. I am not a Pelicans fan. I'm just done with them. Greg Allen, Slim Ghost, veteran and now full-time Madden streamer and YouTuber, joins us this morning. You can find him at Slim Ghost X on the X that used to be called Twitter, and all points in between. You're welcome back into my life and to my platforms anywhere you go. Thank you, sir.
Until next time, buddy. Thank you.
All right, okay. Take care. I'm going to hang up on you because that's what I got to do. We're going to take a quick break here. Come back on the other side. More great guests headed your way. Hold on tight. Take a deep breath. Road Gang Radio still has life left in it yet.
Thursday.
From the wee small hours of the morning to the crack of dawn, RadioNemo has been there with you.
Whether you've got the overnight or you're the first wheels on the road, RadioNemo's been where you need us to be.
Providing the laughs, giving the facts, playing the tunes, and keeping it rolling.
We've been your light in the darkness, your first cup of coffee, and a voice of sanity.
Semi-sanity, actually. We're all a little crazy here. Crazy for the men and women who keep this country going and moving and doing.
Crazy for trucking, crazy for truckers of all shapes and sizes.
Is that a fat joke?
Not if we can help it. Because it isn't just about the rules and regs. It isn't just about the day-to-day. It's about your health, your homes, and your hearts.
So we wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you from everyone at RadioNemo for sticking with us, standing by us, and keeping the traditions rolling into the future.
St. Christopher Truckers Fund provides free health and wellness programs for drivers to help prevent some common medical conditions seen in the industry. These programs include diabetes prevention, rigs without SIGs, a tobacco and nicotine cessation program, healthy habits for the long haul, a 12-week total body wellness program, a vaccine voucher program that includes free flu, shingles, COVID, and pneumonia vaccines, and GPS, Get Preventative Screenings. That includes free at-home cancer screening tests. These programs are available to Class A over-the-road semi-truck drivers. For more information or to register for a program, visit the St. Christopher Fund website at truckersfund.org.
There are precious few nonprofits in the trucking industry, and even fewer that make a tangible difference in the lives of professional drivers. So thank goodness for the St. Christopher Fund. Since 2008, over 4,000 over-the-road semi-truck drivers have turned to the St. Christopher Truckers Fund when a medical issue took them out of work. The SCF steps in and pays necessary household expenses such as mortgage, rent, utilities, insurance, and vehicle payments. The SCF also provides free health and wellness programs for drivers. So find out how the SCF can help you, or help the SCF yourself. They'll turn your dollars and cents into that tangible difference for the professional drivers who need it most. Support our highway heroes with a donation at truckersfund.org.
Let's get back in the gang. Road Gang Radio is coming at you now with the next great guest. rumbling, bumbling, stumbling our way on to different places and new beginnings. New beginnings, by the way, is part of what Kate King, a licensed professional counselor and author, is actually going to be talking with us about today. Mend or Move. Mend or Move On, a guide to healing or leaving toxic relationships, is at the core of so much of the work that she does when she's not choosing to write. And by the way, we're so thrilled to have you. Her previous books include The Radiant Life Project, a psychological self-help guide to cultivating a deeply healthy, empowered life, and The Authentic Mother, a creativity-based companion book for new parents. She lives with her husband and their 2 children in Morrison, Colorado, which means she practices what she preaches. She's an MA, an LPC, an ATR, BC, and is a licensed counselor, professional one, and board-certified art therapist with nearly 20 years of experience helping individuals heal their inner wounds so they can positively contribute to the evolving collective. Good morning to you. Welcome aboard. It's great to have you.
Good morning to you. Thank you for having me.
So let's kind of dive in here, by the way. So much of what has happened over the last decade, and look, I got a serious question to kind of wrap up this first question is, but we've been seeing as people learn more and more about themselves and learn more and more about what causes their wounds, we've been seeing more and more people take a role, take a choice to say, you know what, I'm done here. I don't need to maintain contact. I don't care what cultural incrustations tell me I have to do. I got some toxic people in this family and I'm done. Is this a growing trend, or are we just hearing more about it because we hear more about everything these days?
It's such a good question. And I think a lot of people, especially on social media, are asking that question. I personally don't think it's happening more. I think this is something that has happened for as long as humans have had relationships and families, but we are hearing about it more because of the interconnectedness of the internet and the media. And I think we're in a high drama time right now in our world, and this is a very dramatic topic. So I think it gives people a little bit of a dopamine hit to talk about it. But when you're the person going through it, most of the time, if not always, it's the hardest decision that anyone ever has to make, and it's not made lightly. And so the people who are truly going no contact, navigating estrangement, have probably tried for years and decades, to the point of maybe even self-abandonment and illness, to try to heal these relationships that really show no hope for healing.
I'm actually encouraged by your answer too, by the way, because I was worried. And I didn't know the answer. Like I said, I make the joke all the time. Unless I'm an attorney, I like to ask questions I don't know the answer to. And because one of the things that we've seen, and must drive you crazy, is somebody who's actually licensed, somebody who's actually really, done what I call the rigorous work of understanding things. Words like sociopath and narcissist and malignant narcissist and, and toxic and trigger, a lot of words, a lot of vocabulary get thrown around by people who don't know, who literally have become experts without certification. And I'm not saying that there aren't people out there with common sense or people that do rigorous work on subjects that interest them. My worry, and you've elated to some degree, is that relationships are breaking down before any healing can occur because people have been armed with all of this, I'm going to call it psychobabble. Because what you engage in is not psychobabble. I want to make that really clear. But there are people who have armed themselves to the teeth and tell people stuff like, you're a malignant narcissist. And I'm like, no, he's just a jerk. There's a difference. And I want you to kind of talk about that at least too, because I feel like there's a group of people out there, particularly with connectivity on social media, who read a couple of symptoms of a sociopathic murderer and think, oh, that's my husband, or that's my ex, or that's my mom, And can you kind of distinguish between you don't know what the hell you're talking about and what you do where you do know what the hell you're talking about?
Yeah, there's a lot of gurus out there these days, and I always tell my clients and really even my friends, don't follow anyone who calls themselves a guru. There is no such thing. I mean, if you're not learning from someone who's also doing the work, also having the humility to admit that they don't have all the answers, then don't follow anyone who claims to know everything. It just doesn't exist. And there's a huge wave these days of life coaches who, there are certainly credentialing that can happen in the life coaching realm, but there's a lot of life coaches who really don't have any clinical experience or credentials. So you have to be discerning with who you listen to and who you're getting your advice from, especially when it comes to these really life-changing topics like these deep relationships and whether you should continue or whether you should end them. And the biggest problem, I think, with people who don't have therapeutic licensure and clinical training is that they're not trained to really hold space for the type of destabilization that can happen when you do the deep work. Because when you dig into trauma, when you're digging into inner child wounds and really deep embedded nervous system challenges, it's possible that someone can become dysregulated, and you have to know what to do to hold that for them and to help move them through it. So essentially, I would always recommend working with a therapist and someone who's licensed and trained in psychotherapy. And if they also happen to be a life coach, great. But I think first and foremost, they should be a therapist. And to speak to your second question about the difference between someone who's just a jerk versus someone who's really toxic, I actually write about this at length in my book, Mend or Move On, because it feels like such an important distinction. And so essentially I have three things to look for to really discern if a relationship is toxic. First of all, the harmful behaviors are consistent and persistent. It doesn't happen once. It's not a once in a while thing. It's like every single time that you're with them, you're feeling really deeply wounded. And that's the second piece, is that the harm is really true. You're being hurt on a deep level. It feels like trauma. It could be abuse. It's not just minor irritation or frustration in the relationship. It's actually deep trauma that's happening over and over. And then the third indicator is you have these kind of symptoms in your body. I call it like twisty, turny, pushy, pulley. You have these conflictual symptoms of kind of wanting to lean in but back away. You feel tired but wired. Your nervous system is jacked up, but you also feel exhausted. So listening to the body, because the body doesn't lie. And when you're about to see someone or after you've seen someone who has these toxic qualities, your body is waving every red flag it has.
Yeah, and I will tell you this too, and you kind of brought this up, the idea that one of the things I love about the book is that it doesn't just say, here's the definition of these words, but here's what they're not. And, I kept thinking as you were just talking about gaslighting, came up here. And by the way, you unpack toxic, and it almost feels like a borderline etymology, and I mean that as a compliment. It feels like an incredibly well-written, entertaining kind of, let's talk about what toxic really means here. And the importance of the book, it seems to me, to some degree, for people who are looking for ways of mend or move, to either mend things or move on, is to actually have an understanding of knowing what they're looking at. And it's almost like you're asking people to do a little bit, not a little bit, but some extensive internal work before confronting demons of the past or ongoing wounds. Because that's one of the other things that you talk about, the idea of that disruption that occurs. Somebody digs too deep. And I mean, I can use a really positive example. It don't matter if you can find gold or oil. If you don't know how to get it out safely, it's worthless. And so much of what you're writing about is ways of figuring this stuff out. And as you've said before at the top, please, for God's sake, go talk to somebody who actually knows what they're talking about. And really quickly, it's important to remind people that one therapist might not be for you, just like anything else. If you don't like the service that you're getting, it's okay to go to someplace else, right? You need to be able to find what you need, correct?
Absolutely. And most therapists offer free initial consultations so that you can check each other's vibe out and you can connect and see if you really feel understood and you feel a rapport starting to build. And the therapist wants that too. They want what's in the highest good of you, your healing. And so they don't want the relationship if it doesn't feel right to you. And most therapists are so well armed with referrals that they can help you find the right place. So it's kind of like an interview process. And it's always concerning to me when a therapist doesn't offer that free consultation. So that could be sort of your discerning moment, is if you're interested in the therapist and they won't talk to you for free to feel things out, that might be your indication that it could be a no.
Yeah, that's really a good approach. I did have one guy who told me he wouldn't charge me if I didn't go with him, but he would charge me if, in fact, I got to the second session, which was interesting.
Okay, that is interesting.
Yeah, and it's because, and I realized what had happened was we actually did have a real session. It wasn't just a back and forth, but he made it really, really clear. He said, if you get to the end of this and you don't want to come see me again, he said no charge. And I understand. And like I said, But that's a really kind of good rule as well too. I get where you're coming from with that. The other thing is, I'm gonna throw some terms at you because gaslighting is at the heart of a lot of this stuff, and I want you to go wherever you want to go with this. But so much of why people don't understand how traumatized they've been is because they take on the blame and responsibility of what has happened upon themselves. Is that a fair thing? I mean, in many ways, that's what I kind of took from the book, that it begins believing that you're to blame, and it's only kind of when you have your Paul on the road to Damascus moment of, wait a minute. I've been told one too many lies and told one too many times that I shouldn't feel the way I feel or I don't feel the way I feel. Is so much of this, how do you recognize when you've had that epiphany?
Yeah, I think manipulation and gaslighting, they are absolutely forms of abuse. They don't show bruises or cuts or broken bones, but they are psychological abuse because they're messing with the way that you perceive reality. So anyone who tells you that your reality isn't real or questions what you feel to be true is essentially gaslighting. And it can happen from a large degree of a spectrum. There can be a continuum of severity here. And the most dangerous people use gaslighting as sort of a weapon to control and have power over people who they're essentially being domineering over. And it can be incredibly abusive and damaging. So one of the things you were speaking to is what I call, it's the fourth trap of toxic relationships in my book. I offer 7 traps that are very common that people get stuck in when they're in toxic relationships. The fourth one I call false ownership. And this is essentially when someone believes that it is all their fault. They're taking all the blame of what the relationship is struggling with, why they're having these dynamics. If only I could change myself, this would be better. If only I was more or less of this quality, then this wouldn't be an issue. And that is usually taught to them in the blueprint of the relationship. Like, you're the problem. You need to fix this. I have done nothing wrong. It's all you. And that is at its core a fallacy, because relationships are relational dances. They involve the dynamics between people, so it's never only one person's fault. And so if you find yourself in that false ownership trap, if you're the only one going to therapy, if you're the one who's always in the scapegoat role, if you're the one who's always taking the blame, that right there indicates that it is a toxic relationship, and it's probably very harmful.
There's a line you have that just hit me like a ton of bricks. And it's so obvious. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of stuff here, guys. I don't mean that it's no duh obvious. It's the way you just have to think. It can't always be your fault. And I just love when you wrote that line. So simple. Let's be honest about one thing. You can't always be the problem. It can't always be your fault. And that's a really it's sometimes easy to recognize that. And sometimes, and I want to ask you this question too. Sometimes we were in relationships. I don't want to say that we were abusive, but I want to say where a lot of what went wrong with the relationship was because we just had some unresolved issues from previous things in our life and did not meet them halfway and took on a lot of the blame. But sometimes you take what happened in a previous relationship and you bring it into another one, and you get into that cycle, right, of it's always my fault. It's always my fault. And sometimes you get into that with healthy people, and they're the ones that have to tell you, no, I screwed this up. I mean, sometimes people, I guess, in my own kind of personal life, and everybody understands this, there is no greater burden that can lift off of a person when somebody else says, no, it's my fault. I screwed this up. You're not responsible for what's happened here. You can watch the weight come off of people literally, right?
What you're talking about is it's accountability, and it is something that is so essential in healthy relationships. And it's being talked about a lot more now, so people know what accountability is. And it's really evident when you're in a relationship with someone who refuses or denies accountability. It's not my fault. I didn't do anything. I was a good parent. I was a good spouse. It's all you, right? Because then you know that there is something off the rails, because we should all be able to take accountability for the part that we play in the dynamic being unhealthy. And that is really what can make repair and healing possible. It's the only thing that you need is the willingness for everyone to come to the table with accountability, with curiosity, taking ownership of what's theirs, and being curious about the other person's experience. So when you lack accountability, you often have huge amounts of blame and accusation and aggression and closed-mindedness and rigidness. And that is what contributes to pushing someone to the point where they feel they have no choice but to cut ties with you.
Yeah, it's really interesting too because you talk about the three different kind of relationships: utility, pleasure, and appreciation. And sometimes, okay, this is the idea about accountability too, because you have to account for the relationship as well. You have to kind of, I guess my question is, when entering into any sort of new relationship, even if it's one where the boundaries, because let's face it, utility, pleasure, and appreciation, you point this out, often blend and bleed. They're not always, one thing or another. But it's so important. Is there a methodology that you can kind of talk about where people can start relationships based on previous relationships, where there's a way of contractually laying out the terms without it turning into a deposition or a lawyerly meeting or a contract?
I think especially these days, because like we talked about before, this topic is being really spoken about a lot more openly. So it's not really that out of bounds to have a relationship that's in its early stages, but to speak openly about what the relationship dynamics are at play, what the hopes are for the relationship, and really to be upfront at first with what you're working with. So, for example, I have a personal story around this with a friend of mine. We were friends a long time ago when our kids were babies, maybe like 12 years ago, and then we kind of grew apart, and we came back together recently by just a series of events, and we were both really honest about our desire to build a friendship together and to really approach it from a healthy place. That we had both done a lot of our inner work. We had both done a lot of healing around relationships and dynamics. And so we kind of came to the table and said, hey, look, I'm working with some of my codependency patterns, or I'm aware that I isolate sometimes. So this is something I'm bringing into this friendship, but I really like you and care about you and want to build something with you. So I'm telling you up front that these are the things I'm working on. So have some grace for me if they show up in our dynamic. And also, thanks for being witness to my growth process, because essentially that's what friendship is.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is the fact that people say terrible things to each other as friends, and what ends up happening is that there's a lot of stuff I'm kind of wrestling with here because there's so much in the book to kind of talk about, but the idea that having good boundaries, even as really close and intimate friends, is not bad. It's okay. It's okay even in the most intimate and deep relationships to have very, very clear boundaries, isn't it? And I think that part of what happens at the beginning of things is that we're such in the flush of what they call limerence. We're such in the flush of what we call, first day of school or the first day of vacation, that all of those things remind us of, that we kind of throw caution to the wind and end up giving away parts of ourselves that really aren't for anybody else, exposing vulnerabilities and all that. And what it sounds like to me with your own story is the fact that both of you got a chance to kind of return to the place wiser, but remembering what you loved about each other to begin with, but then understanding how to kind of navigate the rest of the stuff, right?
Right. Well, and you have to understand that it's a human drive to have connection. We're wired for it. We're built for it. We need it. It's as essential to our nervous systems as food and water and air. So we really are always driven to connect, and it's just kind of the dirty work of figuring out how to do so in healthy ways that gets people tangled up. And so the more you practice this stuff, it's like growing a muscle. You start to be stronger, you start to be clearer, and when it comes to boundaries, it's such a common misunderstanding that you only need boundaries in bad relationships. Really, it's the opposite. The best, healthiest relationships are the ones that have the strongest boundaries, because they're the ones with the clearest communication and the most honoring of where each other's edges are. Because if you know where someone's limits or edges are, you're more likely to respect them. And when you're respectful of someone else's limits, then they're more likely to feel trust and safety in the relationship. And then you build a reciprocal connection that's based on trust and safety and honoring of each other's limits. Whereas without boundaries, you're so much more likely to just plow through people's limits without even knowing that you've done so, because they've never been communicated. And that's how resentment builds, and feeling lack of safety, lack of trust. And it's all because there weren't this structural boundary in place that let you know these are my individual needs, these are my individual differences from you, this is where I end and you begin. And that's really important.
Mend or Move On, a guide to healing or leaving toxic relationships. Kate King joins us this morning. We're so thrilled to have her here, spending some time with us over here at Road Gang Radio. Kate, the other thing is too is that, I was figuring something out with a friend of mine who, had a habit with bad boundaries for many years and has done the work in so many ways, has done the work and had a really painful experience with a date that went sideways and came back and was a little wounded. But I found myself reassuring her when she told me the events of how it played itself out. I said, "No, wait a minute." I said, the date brought this stuff up on the second date. This is what happened. You were not happy about it. You made it clear you weren't happy about it. There was an unpleasant exchange, and then you left with the desire never to see him again, and you made it really clear for him not to contact you. And what I told her, I said it hurts because you built a wall and your defenses worked. It doesn't mean you didn't take damage, but it does mean that you held the line finally. And I said, you're getting used to the idea of boundaries. And I was kind of curious about that, to kind of distinguish between giving ourselves credit when we construct a clear boundary and somebody tries to violate it, and then blaming ourselves for feeling bad, but those feelings are based on previous experiences and not on what happened in the moment, and to actually find a way to celebrate the fact that for once in your life, or from the beginning now, you're actually holding the line and not going further.
That's a beautiful example of growth. I think healing and growth when it comes to relationships happens in layers. And so when you're challenging a pattern that might have been deeply embedded in you and you're doing things differently, it doesn't feel comfortable right away. It feels unfamiliar. It feels new. It feels scary. Our nervous systems are programmed to protect us. And so sometimes the unfamiliar gets equated with wrong or bad, but that's not synonymous. It's not necessarily true. It just is new. You're just practicing something different, and your nervous system is like, oh my gosh, this feels scary. This feels new. And it's not until you start to get reinforcement and validation that the new practice is benefiting you and serving you well that your nervous system starts to be like, okay, this is okay. We're growing. This is good. And so this is why we need to be patient with ourselves as we're moving through the layers of healing and growth. And it's important to have community. Your friend, she's so lucky to have you, because she's having healthy mirroring back to her that the growth work she's doing makes sense to someone else. And so you're co-regulating with her in that sense and helping her to see that the changes she's making relationally are really beneficial.
Can you kind of, for the sake of our listeners here too, in regards to helping friends, and we've left so much on the table here, but can you kind of explain what compassion is? My wife has a terrific definition where she distinguishes it from other things that people often confuse compassion for. But explain to our listeners your conception of compassion.
Yeah, in the book, I create different descriptions between compassion, empathy, and sympathy, because I think those are the three that get sort of commingled. Maybe your wife has the definitions too. So compassion is essentially, it's being able to feel warmth and love and care for someone with boundaries and mindfulness that you are not that person. It is not your experience. You feel for them, but you remain autonomous. You remain an observer of their experience. And so that allows you to actually support them better, witness them better, because you're not getting lost in the depths of their experience and feeling it as though it is your own, which would be empathy.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, because there are people who often, will tell you that they're empaths as if somehow it's a good or a bad thing. And you're like, no, it's just a thing. And that's the other thing too, is that the ability to have empathy is an amazing ability, and the more in depth it is, it can be a real kind of positive thing. But it can overwhelm you, right? That, that not being able to set boundaries around your levels of empathy. Is this fair? Okay. Is compassion a boundary and empathy what is behind it? I mean, I realize that's not how you kind of lay it out there, but the idea that compassion is our ability to be there for them and to be an observer and a witness to what is going on and to lend support. But it's not the ability, it's not our job to take on the emotional damage or to take on the emotions that they're feeling and have them transferred to us, because is it fair to say that one of the most toxic relationships there is for people who are looking to download their anxiety and their issues onto you in the hopes that your empathetic nature will take them on?
Potentially, yes, because codependency is when you lose the edges between where you end and another person begins, and your level of being okay in the world is linked with their level of being okay in the world. So you lose that you're two autonomous people and you start to sort of blend. So when you have a blend like that, there can be this depth of empathy that is sort of clouding the waters and making it unclear what's yours, what's mine, where do I end, where do you begin? So I think so, yes. I would say more codependency than empathy. There are ways to have healthy empathy, but it is something that we see in codependency as a pretty big problem, that people end up sort of learning how to step out of empathy and into compassion.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's a really kind of. By the way, like I said, I wasn't saying that empathy was a bad thing, but you can see that how that enough damage to empathy can make you actually think that you and the person who's feeling that thing are one and the same, and of course that leads to what you define as codependency throughout this wonderful book, guys. I can't recommend it enough. By the way, if you're wrestling with ways to kind of let go or make a decision to kind of salvage something, I got about a minute left because I want to leave people with some hope here. I've really set up. We dug into the first half, which was so fascinating, but I do want to set up the fact that there is a lot of hope in this book in regards to not just cutting off toxic ties, but there's some real opportunities here to mend some fences in a way that allows both parties to move on in a healthy fashion, or sometimes depart as friends, because that's a big thing too. Sometimes, like, we're not good for each other right now. Maybe there's a time like you and your friend did where we can come back to each other. But there are ways to kind of have either honorable exits or new beginnings, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think of it too that if a relationship ends, it doesn't have to be bad. There's a way to say, I've appreciated our time together. I see the value in this relationship. The season for our connection has expired. I send you off with love. And by ending a relationship that's misaligned or unhealthy, you're freeing both people to go find other relationships that are healthy for them, that really soothe and nourish and care for them on the level that they are ready for, that they are welcoming. So it's not a bad sign if relationships end. It's just a sign that it's time to follow that path. And it also could be an invitation to deepen the relationship. If it feels like it's in troublesome territory, then meet each other at the table with openness, with willingness, with accountability, and see if you can create a stronger relationship than you had previously by deepening into a new level together.
I love that, by the way. And every time I think about what you just said, that kind of conversation reminds me of one of the final things that Gandhi said about the British. We've walked a long way to get our independence from them. We might as well show them to the door as friends. And I just love the way that lands, the idea that you can actually have somebody where it's like, it's weird because Robert Redford just passed away, and it made me instantly think about the end of The Way We Were, where they part ways on that sidewalk, finally getting some decent closure. But it doesn't mean they're going to be friends forever, friends together for the rest of their lives. Sometimes it's like, man, I learned a lot. Man, what a gift. But that gift has run its course. We have given each other all we can give each other, and anything else is just hurting and pain. What are you doing next? What's going on with you? Where are your next appearances? Where's the world taking you?
Well, to be honest, I am at a place right now where I need a rest. This book has been a big labor of love, and I've done a ton of podcasts and radio shows like this and news appearances, and so I'm really hoping that the book can meet the people who are ready for it. And I'm very active on social media, so I'll continue to do my good work there, and I speak on big and small stages and do all kinds of good things in my private practice. And for now, that feels like enough. So stay tuned. Not sure what comes next.
It feels like enough. It really does. Kate King has joined us this morning. So thrilled to have her. The name of the book is Mend or Move On, A Guide to Healing or Leaving Toxic Relationships. Thank you so much for making the time for us. Thank you very much for deepening my understanding as well, too. Good chance to actually talk to the person responsible for the words. Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, we're going to be back on the other side of this. As you know, we are making this up as we go along today as we begin to wind down stuff. Nothing, by the way, there's some people who are not here today who I don't have toxic relationships with, and God, I wish they were here. But we'll figure out some more stuff today, tomorrow, and for the next week as Road Gang Radio makes its final approach, hopefully with better producers moving forward.
It's one simple act. One simple act that helps Wreaths Across America fulfill its mission to remember,
honor,
and teach.
Sponsoring a wreath, one more wreath,
means one more adoring father, one more loving mother,
one more heroic son,
one more brave daughter,
one more beloved family member,
one more dearly missed friend,
one more American,
one more wreath upon the gravestone of someone who served the cause of freedom,
honored for their sacrifice,
never forgotten,
always remembered,
through one
simple
act.
One simple act. Go to wreathsacrossamerica.org/RadioNemo and keep the mission moving forward. Check out the new over-the-top lineup at participating Country Pride and Iron Skillet restaurants. 3 gigantic sandwiches loaded with flavor. Try the Chicken Parm Stack, the Big Country Combo, or the Ultimate Smash Melt. The Ultimate Smash Melt. 2 delicious smash burger patties, surrounded by 2 grilled cheese sandwiches. 2 sandwiches in 1. Visit your favorite Country Pride or Iron Skillet restaurant and come hungry.
Available for dine-in only at participating Country Pride and Iron Skillet restaurants inside TA or Petro Travel Centers.
Thursday.
In a video game, if you get enough experience, you level up. And when you level up, you gain more skill. And with enough skill, you beat the boss and win the game.
Sounds a lot like trucking, doesn't it?
Except in trucking, you don't beat the boss, you become the boss. And if you want to be the boss, you gotta meet the boss.
And that boss? Carrier's Edge boss, Jane Jezraoui.
Want your drivers to level up? Carrier's Edge has the training, comprehensive safety, compliance, and best practices on one website. It's a simple subscription with no contract and no commitment. Learn more. Try it out. Level up. CarriersEdge.com.
Hey, come on! We're starting the game!
All right, I'm coming. Wait for me. CarriersEdge.com.
There are precious few nonprofits in the trucking industry, and even fewer that make a tangible difference in the lives of professional drivers. So thank goodness for the St. Christopher Fund. Since 2008, over 4,000 over-the-road semi-truck drivers have turned to the St. Christopher Truckers Fund when a medical issue took them out of work. The SCF steps in and pays necessary household expenses such as mortgage, rent, utilities, insurance, and vehicle payments. The SCF also provides free health and wellness programs for drivers. So find out how the SCF can help you, or help the SCF yourself. They'll turn your dollars and cents into that tangible difference for the professional drivers who need it most. Support our highway heroes with a donation at truckersfund.org.
Road Gang Radio coming back at you for the last half hour. Hoping our guest will give us a call in. Went to voicemail, but that happens from time to time. It's always helpful when you can stay on the phone making the call while the show's rolling along, but I don't have that advantage today. I'm just going to get through his bona fides in case he can join us. If he can't, we'll see if we can reschedule him for a 10 to 15-minute drop-in. Jack Ratliff, by the way, is a Navy SEAL. His new book is called Riding the White Bull, The Making of a Navy SEAL. It's a literary memoir of character, discipline, and service before the battlefield. Let me kind of give you a brief summation. Long before combat, before elite training, and before the Navy SEALs became a cultural myth, Jack was learning how character was forged. Risk, discipline, and responsibility. In Riding the White Bull, this book he's offering a deeply reflective literary memoir that examines how a life of service is shaped long before a man ever faces warfare. It departs from those typical kind of military memoirs that focus simply on the battlefield. Instead, Jack, who is a retired U.S. Navy lieutenant commander, what he does is he's kind of tracing the formative experiences that shaped his resilience, how he was brought up in West Texas, his collegiate life in the 1950s. He fought forest fires in Yellowstone Park. He was in the ROTC for Navy. He did his service aboard a destroyer in the Tin Can Navy and elite training with Underwater Demolition Team 11, the direct precursor to the Navy SEALs of today. He story kind of tells what it's like to serve on a ship under a Queeg of sorts, is how he describes him. For those of you who don't know who Queeg is, he's the ship commander right out of the Caine Mutiny, which of course most notably featured the talents of Humphrey Bogart, but then was later remade into a darn good piece of television cinema with Kiefer Sutherland in that fateful role. He can also talk about in that book how it feels to come under sniper fire from a deranged training instructor during UDT training. But at the center of the book, I found, is a harrowing rodeo encounter with a white Brahma bull. And I'll let him talk about it if we get him on here on the show. If we don't, we'll get him on. We'll figure out a way to squeeze this remarkable American, a great American on. It's a really kind of terrific memoir. You don't get this kind of thing a lot. A lot of people often write about one damn thing after another, a lot of just kind of combat-focused stuff, and while that can always be important, and anybody who can speak to war from a place of its senselessness and often the awfulness of it is always a valued lesson, there's something about this particular book that I really enjoyed in the sense that there was a lyricalness to it and understanding how character is put together. That is such a crucial thing. And it's kind of where I want to turn next in this last half hour. You guys can always give me a call and jump into the conversation. Would love to hear from a couple of you. 615-292-6366. NEMO, of course, is what it stands for. Let me make this really clear, too. I'd love to hear from any of you. But given what I'm going to talk about here in a minute, there are a couple of you I think might have particular insights into what I'm going to say next. About 3 years ago, actually 3 years ago, I was at a Matt's, and I'll be going to Matt's. I can't speak for Dave or Lindsay. I think Dave's done. I think Dave is, ready to enjoy company with his wife and with the friends that he has forged over time. He'll be making appearances and dropping in, but it's about time. And it's been unfair. The man has stuck around, I think, too long out of a sense of deep responsibility and honor, and it's now time to kind of call it a day. And so he's going to take that step back finally, mercifully, and deservedly so. Many of us wish it had been under better circumstances and better conditions, but that's what it is. I'm not going to actually put any spin on this, guys. It could have been better. The good news is that the man has his wits, the man has his body, and the man has a future ahead of him that he's going to totally, completely enjoy. Lindsay, we got some stuff we got to kind of talk about moving forward. I know that her focus right now is on We Should Write. It is up and running on all podcast platforms. So, hey, guys, make sure you continue to check out We Should Write wherever it is available, whether it is on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, or any place you get your podcast. Please continue to check out great content coming in your direction from Lindsay. But 3 years ago at Matt's, actually maybe a little bit longer, maybe 4. It's been a long time. I have to go back and check how far back they go. Education Station is something that was important to me. I realized that I was talking to people from trucking programs, from CDL programs, a lot of them, on and off my show. And then because of our friend Marilyn Serber, who was then at 10th Street, did me a real solid and gave us a sponsorship so that we could go cover the NTDC, the National Trucking, not the NTDC, sorry, that's the championships, the NFPFTDS, the National Association of Publicly Funded Truck Driving Schools out in Arizona. And, usually when we do conference shows, it's a mixture of cool things that are happening at the conference and then somebody who was looking to sell some stuff and maybe be onboarded as a sponsor. There were too many times, as a matter of fact, towards the end where we had a lot of people who were on as sponsors and less about the cool, fun stuff. And so we would get in these kind of fights with sales and the people who ran it about how can we create that kind of mix. But the great thing about going out, because we were paid for, completely paid for on that trip out to Arizona, thank you, Marilyn, is that I got a chance to talk to about, I would roughly say 10 people who specialize in working in the area of training the next generation of truckers, training the next generation of trainers, and figuring out the methodologies and the approaches from a publicly funded school standpoint of how to kind of create the next generation of drivers. Community colleges, tech vocational colleges, high school programs that focused on that. Anybody who could be a member of that organization, we got a chance to talk to and met a lot of great people in that space. So there you go. And then I realized, I'm like, how many members are in this thing? And then they told me the number. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, what was interesting was a lot of the time when you talk to people about trucking culture, you talk to one carrier, you talk to another, and with notable examples, it's the same boilerplate nonsense. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons why a lot of this stuff that you'll hear on other platforms is not interesting, particularly you'll hear the same talking points kind of exercised over and over again. one of the biggest problems is that nobody wants to say anything controversial. Nobody wants to talk about what they have going on proprietary-wise. And nobody wants to be the one to say the obvious thing. Everybody doesn't like anybody else, but they also want to make sure that they can like each other in public, if you dig. I am not going to speak about people that make me angry I can't see straight, because if I do, I'm going to have to run into them, and I'm actually not as aggressive as I claim to be. I'm really just passive-aggressive. Okay. But with those teachers and with those instructors and with those people who ran those programs, program directors and all, head of departments, all that stuff, each one of them came in because they all represented different geographies, which meant different kind of truckers they had to produce. They all represented, in those different geographies, different kind of needs for those communities, different sorts of partners in those communities, and therefore different sorts of students as well, too. Some of them had people who were non-traditional students, people over 25. Some of them had 18 to 25-year-old students. It was all of these different groups of people, because teaching there's a solid foundational thing in regards to teaching. You have to have enough understanding of the information and the ability to communicate it to allow somebody to benefit from your explaining what it is you're doing. Does that make sense? Let that land for a second. The idea that all you have to do to be a really good teacher to start with is to have a foundational understanding, to be somewhat of an expert on the topic, and then be able to communicate it in such a way that someone else can take that information and apply it to their own experience, and then either have information or have a skill set to be able to then interact with the world around them. That's number one. Number two, you have to actually have the ability to admit what you don't know. I think the best teachers are lifelong students. And if, in fact, they are lifelong students, they, in turn, see students as someone to learn from. That even the simple act of asking a question, a student is teaching you. Because sometimes they ask a question in a way that you didn't expect and realize that the rest of the world doesn't think like you, and then you have to adjust how you explain to somebody's thinking like that. Or they ask you a question where you don't know the answer. And rather than being defensive and trying to change the topic, or even being worse, making something up that isn't entirely true, to learn the ability to say, I don't know, let you and I go find out together. Because the best teacher gets a question from a student that they don't know the answer to, and then goes and seeks out the answer. And then says, you should seek out your answer too, and then let's compare notes and kind of do this together and see how it applies. So those are the two kind of foundational things, and with the understanding and emotional empathy, because we've had a lot of people who have talked about what I've called the light bulb that goes on above their head. There's a light bulb when you're teaching a classroom, when you're talking to your children, anytime you're engaged with people and you're trying to kind of explain something or explain your passion for something or instruct them on how to do something better, at some point, especially if they want it, especially if the student wants it, you will see a light bulb go on above their head. What it really means is it's a look in their face, or it's a change in their posture, or it's a lean in. Something happens that makes them more attentive and they get pulled into it. And you say, that's it, the aha moment. And if you can combine those three things, a grasp of the material and the ability to communicate it, an understanding that each individual student is different and that they, in fact, are instructors to you as well. And then finally, the joy that comes in seeing the information that you have exported from yourself and imported to somebody else land with understanding. You have those three things. That's a lot of heavy lifting. Now, I want you to think about that from a standpoint of being a trucker. Because here's the thing. There's plenty of great quarterbacks. There's plenty of people who can read a defense like there is no tomorrow. But they're not students of the game. I don't mean that. Well, actually, I do mean that. They're not students of the game in the traditional way that they want to sit down and talk to you about it in detail, that they can go over it with you and that you can pick their brain. The other thing is about being a great teacher, too, is you have to get over this one, too. Wait, you don't know that? You want to turn the light off in somebody's eyes? Say that. I can't believe you don't know that. Wow. You got a lot to learn. Hey, where you been, man? As opposed to, oh, you don't? Great. I get to be the first person to teach you that. Great. Let's go do it together. I can't wait to share this wonderful information with you. And so I realized in that, I haven't lost the thread, by the way. I realized that in that moment in Arizona when I was talking to those folks, I said, there's 10 of these people here, and each one had a different approach, and each one had a different kind of understanding of how this has to work, and each one had different students to serve, and each one had different geographies. How many members are here? And they told me. And I went, oh, my God. Maryland is also paying for us to travel to go to the CVTA for Lindsay, Lawler, and I to head on over to the Commercial Vehicle Training Association, paying us to go do that. And I went, wait a minute. If I hit it off with those folks, and I've already hit it off with these folks, and I got 10 folks out of them, I said each one of those 10-minute interviews I did with those 10 folks, I said, that's a 30-minute interview. I said, each one of those people I could have kept going with, and often found myself having to begrudgingly say we are out of time, move on, like we always do. But I also knew that I had a radio show, and I went to Dave, and I said, I got this idea. I said, I think that once a week we could do a segment called Education Station. And we could talk to the movers and the shakers, Missy Blair, comes to mind Martin Garcia, Andy Polikoff. And then there are people who are adjacent, Carrier's Edge, what Jane does, and Cora, our friends over there, Jeff Burkhart, all of those guys. And I said, oh my God, we have a whole network of people that are just itching to have a conversation about how we go about the business of teaching things. It's all interconnected. Because when you hear that, you hear how it should be done. Or you hear models of how it can be done and should be done. And then you realize, of course, what you guys have always known since you've been joining me here, that how many times have you heard us talk with those people on the air, whether it's some kind of, guy who on his side job plays a little drum and enjoys Mobile Mardi Gras, or whether it's somebody out there who, loves his fishing over in Wisconsin. How many times in those conversations did you hear saying, man, there are plenty of people out here who have never been exposed to that kind of training? And I thought to myself that for all these people in the CVTA and the National Association of Publicly Funded Truck Driving Schools, there are hundreds of thousands of people who got CDLs who never had any sort of this level of training. I spent the entire day and a half ago on the phone with Donnie Talk. We just talked our asses off about all kinds of educational stuff and all that. But you see, here's the problem. And this is when you begin to realize the interconnectedness of everything. This is where it gets really important in regards to everything is connected. We talked about this with parking, too. There are people who believe, and I can't say I'm entirely opposed to their line of thinking, that if you simply overnight fix the parking problem. And by fixing the parking problem, it's not just about adding more parking spaces, but making sure those parking spaces are at the nearest possible point where they can actually make a difference. You would solve a whole lot of other problems. You would make the job more attractive to females. Just for starters, you would find there would be less instances of people losing control because they were sleep deprived. You would find people complaining less about what goes on. You would find about how they make things on time. You would find people with less detention rates. You would find better retention rates as well. If you in fact clear up detention, you can actually increase your retention. How many people have walked away from this gig not because their boss was bad, not because the camaraderie they found with people on the road was bad? How many people have walked away because they were at the hour 3 mark in regards to waiting someplace where they were told they would get unloaded? How many times? And how much of that could be alleviated by simply giving a place to muster before you get there? Hey, we're going to be a little late. Can you call it a day? Can you go someplace else? Find a place to park. Hey, we're not packed with people here right now. Why? Because people got a chance. They weren't rushing. They got a chance to take a breath, take a breather. All of it's interconnected. And one of the things that we were talking about earlier, about that 595,000 miles a year for the company that Josh Lovin took over that wasn't being pre-tripped properly. That's the kind of thing that proper training takes care of, right? What was so interesting to me about the last couple of years, and I was guilty at first, I came around. The first couple of calls I got about 5-6 years ago, nobody out here speaks English. We got all kinds of problems at the fuel island. There are all sorts of people that aren't following the rules. There are all sorts of trucks that are obviously uninspected. I'm like going, man, you're talking anecdotally here, man. But more and more over the course of time, as all of that began to kind of mount up, each phone call. And then there are people out there, friends like Marshall, friends like Jerry, friends like Trucker Boson, friends like Forod, friends like Chowder, where I actually got a chance, because I have their numbers, to call and say, hey, look, I'm going to ask you a real question. We're not on the air, not a platform here. I just need to know, are you seeing this? Are you beginning to see more of this? And to a person, it was, yep. Different political backgrounds, different political persuasions, no agenda. Yep, I'm seeing it. And part of the reason you're seeing it is that what has happened is the fact that it's not just, look, you can make a case saying, I don't want to be a member of a union. But whatever you feel about union, let me tell you something, dude. They actually make their members, for the most part, uphold certain standards. Now, if you want to be independent, it's terrific. We don't need unions in that way if, in fact, the training is rigorous. What it takes to become a truck driver, what it takes to do what it is you guys do on a regular basis is, in fact, honored with boundaries, because it's the same thing we talked about before that we were just talking about with the good doctor, with the good therapist, with Kate. Same thing is the fact that, trucking needs to, as an organism, have boundaries and to say, look, if you don't have so many hours, if you don't have so much training, if you, in fact, don't meet the following criteria, you might want to do it and you might think it's an opportunity to a better life, but until you kind of master this stuff, you can't be here. That, in fact, if in fact you want better retention rates, the best way to do it is ensure better training. And with that better training, and this is the other thing too, that one thing we never got a chance to really dig into, we danced around it a little bit, is warning people about the industry. And I don't mean turning them off of the industry. What I mean is sitting down with people and saying, here's why this is hard. People continue to join the military, in case you haven't noticed. People continue to play organized sports despite the fact that coaches often tell them it's going to go on way too long. They don't even get paid for that, by the way. People continue to engage in all kinds of collective sports actions, even when the people who run those things say, we got rules here and you got to follow them. People continue to do it. And I'm just wondering if the next step in this great revolution that's happening in the trucking industry with the enforcement of the non-dock, there's no place left to go. They've made a feint, by the way, to try to get back to the pilot programs and the under 21 driving stuff. They're not going to get there. They're not going to make it happen. It's not going to go through. I'm not concerned about that. I do believe in apprentice programs, and I do believe that there are a number of exceptions that prove the rule, but they're not exceptions. They're people following the rules of what an apprentice program is and going with it. All right. What I'm getting at here is the fact that the next big step, if the DOT, if Mr. Bars really want to seal the deal on all of this and not just clean the system out so we can get back to nonsense. I got to tell you something, guys. Look, you can get rid of all the non-domiciled you want. You can get rid of all the foreigners you want and play all those games we want. If people continue to be allowed to drive on the road with 24 hours of driving and are taught to take tests and thrown behind the wheel of trucks, we're just not going to hear as much about it because it doesn't have the smack of other. It's going to be just as bad. Until we actually, it's two borders. It's the border at the bottom of the country and the border at the top. I'm a big fan, I've told you guys, strong walls, big doors. I really am a fan of big doors. I think that we make people who want to come here and play by the rules wait too long to get through the system. I really do. But it's two borders. It's the walls have to be strong, but the border around trucking has to be strong as well, too. And the only way to ensure it's strong is not just have people in good training programs, but to insist they be in those good training programs. I don't know what the solution is, and I'm not suggesting government intervention. There are smarter people than me when it comes to that particular thing. But there's got to be some way, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, there's got to be some way that we ensure that the people who are getting behind the wheel have been rigorously tested, rigorously examined, rigorously trained, but also, in all fairness to all of them, warned how it would be, told the realities of the job. All of that really lands. Really lands. By the way, thank you, Marshall. You sent me a 20 spot and said rage quit. I feel like I'm rage quitting too, by the way. Trucker Bosun says, I'm offended that you take offense to my being offended by your offensiveness. But I just want to make sure this lands, guys. This is not going to work. None of this is going to work if, in fact, we don't set up the kind of firewall necessary to keep out. Look, there is motion at the border. It began in the previous administration. They didn't pass the bill. Now they got some stuff through. Now the border is much stronger. That's great. We got that kind of set up. Good, done. But until we set a wall around trucking, it means that the bad actors who are already from here, the ones who are actually minted U.S. citizens, they in fact, are the next ones we're going to have to look out for. because the next place the racketeers go, the guys who are running a racket, the guys who are looking for cheap labor are going to go, is with the promise of being able to undercut your rates by giving people CDLs in 24 hours time. And by the way, I don't mean a single day. What I mean is 24 hours in regards to the amount of time they have to spend in those programs to get it. And if you don't think they're out there, you ought to talk to Forod, who sends me a picture about once a week of one more place he sees offering a CDL in 24 hours. That's simply the reality of it. Just letting you know that. Full stop. So, if Education Station, which I thought I wouldn't get a chance to talk about until next week, but we are so packed with people who are going to be coming by to say goodbye, to tell Dave goodbye, and I suggest anytime Dave is on the show, I'm making a rule to it. I'm letting him and I'm letting the guests know. If any of you call on Monday during Nemo Nation to say goodbye, it don't matter who is on, unless it is the President of the United States. Maybe we'll take your call then, too. He actually get a kick out of it. We will take your call if you want to tell Dave goodbye. But so I thought I'd have this opportunity. And like I said, we'll get our guest who was supposed to be back on the show at some point. I got to figure out where it's going to be. It's going to be like cramming it in there. But we'll get him back on the show, and we'll see where we kind of go from there. That's the big thing, though. That's what you can insist on. That's what you can tell your legislators. That's what you can tell people. I don't know, and we'll get some people to get some final thoughts on that on the show in the last week as well, too. But I really want you guys to focus on that. The next big fight. Look, there are people who are taking care of the non-domiciled stuff now. Let them get it, okay? You guys can let your congressmen know, let your representatives know, hey, look, let's get that done, what Colin was talking about today. But the next big step is to literally make it harder to become a trucker. That's right. Make it harder to become a trucker. Make it rewarding to become a trucker. Make people as proud of getting that CDL as people are proud of getting a diploma or a master's or a Juris Doctorate or pilot's license. Make people proud of it. Make people stand there and hold that document up and feel like they've actually accomplished something. Figure out what that needs to look like and insist that those levels and those values be there. I mean, that's the absolute truth of what I'm talking about here, guys, because without that, it don't matter. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If you can't do it that way, then they will figure out one more way to sneak those same drivers in there. And you'll be left with the same nonsense that we're always left with, if you know what I'm saying. I mean, that's just the truth. It's been a fun show, by the way. Nice guests. Some craziness in the morning. I got to figure out how to make sure this is set up for success tomorrow so we don't have a repeat of any of that. I want to give a big thanks to all of our guests, particularly Colin Long, who I have grown so fond over many years. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to get the hell out of here. I'm going to let the road kind of take you wherever it's going. We will keep you informed. This is an important weekend coming up for me after tomorrow's show. I get a chance to kind of finally sit down and get my own thoughts organized as we kind of bring this sucker in for its final ending. You know, the thing is, Marshall says, the only problem I see is you can't teach common sense, and Trucker Boson says we need to find a way to cut some of the red tape and streamline the importing process without easing the requirements. That's exactly it, brother. That's exactly it. Government cutting red tape. By the way, Joe says, that's funny. I need to let. Has been done. Go check out what happened to the IRS in the 90s, Joe. There is hope. What you got to find is somebody who simultaneously believes in government but also believes it should be smaller. His name was Alexander Hamilton. Lincoln was one of those guys too. So maybe we can get those guys in there. All right, that's it. I'm out. I got no more for you except for this. I will talk to you guys on the other side of tomorrow. We'll be set up for success then. Hold on tight. Keep your fingers crossed that the people that owe us money pay us. Thank you, guys. Best of days. Right till the bitter end. I really don't understand what I did wrong on YouTube. Oh, let me see. So so I'm on the Microsoft. I clicked over and it says RadioNemo Live February 12th, 2016. I'm a live producer Facebook. So where do I go? Explore. Oh, let me see something real quick. I'm just missing something. But all it has is a quick picture. Or value. That's what I have. That was the Facebook one I just sent you. That was the Facebook. I'm ending the stream on, okay, I got the YouTube one was easy to figure out, okay? So I got I just ended the YouTube one, okay? YouTube is done. Okay, so the Facebook one, which is the one I had up,